Are we good, Cheryl?
We are good.
Oh, all right. I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Let's start with the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion, anything you want pulled off? You know the drill. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Okay. The next is the second reading from, we did the first reading at the last meeting of the policy, gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms or on that. Do I have a motion to, I guess, approve?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion, questions, comments? I don't think we received anything between last time and this time, but any issues that you want to bring up? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any against? All right. We have nothing under correspondence, so why don't we just move right into the presentation? Start with the education elements. There's nothing in the agenda. Was there something we're supposed to?
Gabby's going to bring it up. Gabby's joining us. She's from Education Elements, and she's been working with the District Goals Subcommittee, which includes John, Chris, Paul, and myself. So we have been having discussions and talking about how to sort of launch the discussion and work around district goals. So Gabby's here to sort of help facilitate a conversation and an activity. Hi, Gabby.
Hi, Laura. Hi, Perry. Thank you guys for having
Hey,
me.
Gabby.
And thank you to whoever gave me screen share privileges. You read my mind.
You're welcome.
Cheryl, she's on it. All right. I will go into a full presentation mode and try and keep it brief too. Want to honor probably other things you'll have on the agenda and also invite other members of the subcommittee that I have been working with to share any thoughts as well. Okay. All right. Well, I've been meeting with Laura, Chris, John, and I am leaving someone off.
Paul.
Hey, Paul. So we've been meeting just as a subcommittee to talk about some strategic planning goals, and we really wanted to give you a board update. We had planned to do an activity in real time, and then we had decided potentially it'd be better to get your initial feedback individually and then sort of roll that up and present that to you. So those of you that got an email really late last night saying you have 24 hours to respond, we really appreciate you doing that. We know that was pretty last minute. But we were able to get some really good initial findings. We're going to leave sort of that request open. That way, if there are other people who weren't able to participate within that really short amount of time, we want to just share initial findings, give you a chance to give us some feedback as well. So wanted to just start by saying this is where we've been as a subcommittee. We did a brainstorm last month thinking about what we even want to write any goals about. And so I'm actually going to skip around and I'll start right here. Something that I shared, and this was actually sort of a request from John that really helped us out, was thinking about the idea of what we're going to use these goals for. And so if the goals are going to be used to actually write a much longer strategic plan for Millbrook as a district, what are some of the buckets, the big rocks, the pillars, the focus areas that we could potentially even write goals about? Because we don't want to obviously tackle everything. We want to really prioritize what's urgent and important. And so the buckets that you see here, this is not an exhaustive list at all, but if you look at any district strategic plan of comparable size to Millbrook and even some larger and smaller, you're going to potentially see goals that are going to fit under one of these umbrella areas. And so wanted to sort of look at two pieces of data right now. One, where the subcommittee feels like Millbrook is strong and where there's some areas of opportunity. And the second piece is where you all as a full board sort of see that same lens and just sort of cross reference those and see where we match up and where we align. So I'm going to go back and I'll come back to the slide, and I'm sure we can make these available to you as well. But the subcommittee went through this activity just called, straws, sticks, and bricks. And the idea is we need to be thinking about what Millbrook does. That's rock solid. Those are the things that we would categorize under this house of bricks analogy. What are things that are pretty solid, but they could be improved? And what are some things that just about hang together and they can topple over at any moment? And this is just an initial brainstorm. So this is really anecdotal. It's not really based on a lot of quantitative data just yet, right? And so wanted to share, this is where the subcommittee was in terms of going through this activity. And again, I'm going to bounce around a little bit. If we look back at this list of pillars, based on what the subcommittee brainstormed, we noticed there were some trends. And there are some pillars that we could actually put them in each of these categories. We could say there's a component of communication that is definitely a house of straw. And then there's potentially a component of that that is more solid, right? And so what I'm going to share with you is just our initial brainstorm as a subcommittee. So the areas that you see to the right that are sort of highlighted: wellness, academics, community engagement, which we think communication could potentially fall under, leadership and systems, all came up as the big themes. If we look across the 4 members that were part of that meeting, there were sort of notes under each of these big categories. And so what I want to do is show you where that fell. If we think about this idea of systems, so this is this first blue one in the bottom left, we actually had a component that we said, this is rock solid, this is solid but could be improved, and this part of it or this component of it could topple over at any minute. And so you can see it's not a perfect mix of we're really good at systems or we're not really good at systems. There are areas that we can point to that are strengths, and there are areas we can point to that we really need to make stronger as a district. So there is a world where as a subcommittee, we say we want to write a goal around systems because we want to capitalize on what's strong and we want to really strengthen areas that are much weaker. The next piece is around leadership. And so leadership came up time and time again as a strength. So house of bricks for us. The component of leadership that we said definitely needs to be improved on is just the idea that as a small district, leaders wear many, many hats. And so someone could feel like they're over capacity or they're under capacity, right? And so just figuring out what the right balance is of using our leaders and really building on their strengths. We have really wonderful leaders. We don't want to burn them out. And we certainly don't want to untap their potential. The next piece that we saw some trends in, again, this is just the subcommittee. This is not the survey that the board filled out, was around wellness. And so same thing, you'll notice there were some areas where we're like, this is really, really strong, but particularly in this school year, we need to be thinking about wellness, not only for students, but also for staff and vice versa. So there's some areas we want to strengthen. Same goes for academics. We saw very similar trends, right? We saw a lot of strengths, particularly in different pathways. And then we saw some areas that we want to strengthen. And then the last piece that was a trend among the subcommittee was this idea of engaging and communicating with the community. Again, it sort of falls in that area where there's some strong pieces. There's definitely a lot of room for improvement there. And so I share all this to say, like, this is what we did prior to that 6 p.m. email yesterday, where we said, can you guys take 10 minutes to fill out this survey? And what I want to do is share some of the initial findings from that. What the subcommittee is going to do is we're going to take what we brainstormed. We're going to take what you shared with us, try and cross-reference where we think there's some areas that we want to write goals on, and then sort of turnkey a version 1 of those goals for you. So these are the initial findings that we got from the survey that you filled out yesterday. And again, if you didn't, we apologize. We know it was really short notice. We're going to leave it open if there's anything you want to add. But you're going to already start to see some trends emerge. We didn't use the same straws, sticks, and bricks protocol. Instead, we wanted to put it into sort of a SWOT analysis just to present initial findings. So a couple of strengths that came up, you'll see one of them is people. We saw this over here as well, right? This idea of our leaders being really, really strong. And so again, you'll start to see some similarities. The community, the size of the district actually allows us to be really flexible and really agile and responsive. So that came up a few times as a strength. A lot of pride in Millbrook, a lot of pride in some of the opportunities that we offer to students outside of academics. And then also, again, a lot of pride in some things that we're able to capitalize on for staff. So this idea of professional development, just like having a small enough community where we can actually know our staff really well. Some weaknesses that came up, and again, initial findings is just communication. And I can't highlight that one enough because I think almost every single person who answered the survey said, we need to tighten up on communication. And so we could write a standalone goal on that. That could also fall under those initial subcommittee findings for engagement, community engagement. Also, this idea, the next two bullets are really similar, but this idea of streamlining our systems and making really efficient processes. So if someone were to join Millbrook as a district, what's the onboarding process? How would they know the Millbrook perspective? How do we make sure that our systems are really, really tight while also offering some opportunities to be responsive? We also know that Millbrook is a part of an equity consortium, and the district as a whole is doing a lot of work to sort of put out a statement around equity. And so want to make sure that that's sort of a new area where we can, from the beginning, make sure that there are some systems to share and communicate what's happening with that work. And then I won't talk about each of these, but this other one came up a few times, this idea of future planning. And so it does feel difficult in a year where you're handling a pandemic, but not just thinking about the right now, but thinking about a few years from now, where do we want to say Millbrook will be as a district? Opportunities, again, you'll see some trends, is this idea of needing to improve communication. That's a huge opportunity for the district. Again, it's small enough where you can get really creative with sort of the channels that you use as well. Also an opportunity to bolster enrollment, while at the same time not enlarging class sizes. So making sure that we're maintaining sort of that appeal of having a smaller class size. We have some really strong academics programs. We want to capitalize on those and strengthen those, also build up our facilities. This increase in parent community engagement, you'll see, was almost directly stated in the subcommittee findings as well. And then again, knowing that there are resources that exist, how can we make sure that we are capitalizing on those? And then the final question we asked is just when you're thinking about these opportunities where we can sort of shift Millbrook in the next 3 to 5 years, what are some of the biggest barriers that are going to prevent that or could potentially prevent that from happening? So almost thinking about, we use the language of like a pre-mortem, right? So we don't want to do an autopsy at the end and say, where did this go wrong? We want to think about in the beginning, if we could predict these are the things that potentially would prevent us from attaining these opportunities, what would they be? And so the big threats that came up were declining enrollment. So potentially competition there, right? So some things that people said were parents potentially competing or enrolling their students into private schools. There's potentially an added layer of, is there a sort of virtual opportunity for a parent? And that could also prevent enrollment from going up. If we don't improve our communication, the opposite of that would be lack of communication, right? And so that would be a big threat to making sure that we're able to achieve some of these opportunities, especially when we think about a few of these earlier bullets. Also, the runway that it takes to get a new initiative off the ground. And so I think that speaks to this idea of a smaller district, a lot of people wearing a lot of hats. We want to be really efficient in our system, so we're not putting more on people's plate, which would be slowing down some of the decision-making processes. Any anticipated budget cuts, staff or turnover, those could potentially be threats as well. And then I really appreciated this one, thinking about short-term threats that might not always be true for Millbrook, but are something that are certainly real this year. Is just this idea of how are we going to quote unquote recover from COVID and COVID disruptions that are aligned to that. And so whether that's recovery in terms of wellness, making sure that we are thinking about staff and student wellness, whether it's recovery in terms of academic gains, we want to make sure that we are preventing those from being barriers. I do want to share next steps, but I want to invite Laura, Chris, John, Paul. Is there anything that you would want to add to anything that I shared?
Oh, I think it's great additions. I appreciate everyone last minute doing this. And there's a lot of similarities between the two.
Yep, ditto.
Yeah, it'll be interesting over time, the patterns that surface and trends that surface to help us hone in on what we want to focus on.
And want to thank John for bringing us the sort of the SWOT framing. I know this is something that we probably have all used in one way or another, but seeing it visualized like this is going to be really helpful for us as a subcommittee too. So thank you, John. So just want to share a couple next steps, and then I'll stop sharing screen so we can see everybody and open it up for questions. We're sort of here, right, where we're sharing our initial findings as a subcommittee, just the reflection activity we did with the straws, sticks, and bricks. Our initial findings from the survey that we asked you to fill out. And again, we're leaving that open if there's some other things you want to add. And we want to sort of align that to some of those focus areas. So if I go back to here, right, we can say, like, out of all of the possible things that we could potentially write goals about, these are the ones that are coming up over and over again. So it's going to be really important for us to write strategic goals for those. So that's what we are going to be doing next, is drafting those initial goals in each of the selected focus areas. And our hope is that we can turnkey that back to the same group and just share a draft of that and give you an update and potentially give you something to react to as well. So, all right, what questions do we have?
So Abby, we're going to try to coalesce this thing into 3 to 5 kind of goals at the normal amount.
Yeah, I think any more than that, and we probably can't give it the due diligence. Even larger districts, I don't think would tackle more than that. But what we could potentially do is we could take some of the big rocks and we can say, this is our year 1 goal because it's urgent, it's important, and we also have the resources right now. But we know that, like, 3 years from now, under the same exact bucket, here's another goal we might want to be thinking about. But it might be time dependent. It might be dependent on enrollment size. There might be some variables that are going to shift in 2024 that we're not aware of yet.
So we're looking to come back with a proposal, and certainly the board can weigh in and cross off some whatever the board feels or add. That's what it's about. Just trying to move it along in some respect. And this period will be open for more contributions for how long, Abby?
I won't close it, so forever, if you would like access to it. If again, want to acknowledge, we sent it very late yesterday because we were like, oh, we could do this activity, or it would be really awesome if we could actually give you some more processing time and not do it in real time so we could share back trends. And so I think if you could potentially fill it out by the end of this week, if you didn't get a chance to, that would be really helpful. And if not, we can work with Laura to make sure we find other opportunities to get your feedback.
I think, to all of you, I think this is incredibly important. We have to start thinking beyond the next school year. What are we going to do? How much is it going to cost us? This is something that we've been, I think, struggling with for a bit. Where should we be in 3 years? Where should we, what should we be investing in now? Because it's going to take that long for it to take hold. So, the first step is to get what do we want the district to be, and then putting in some real goals with deliverables and dates that say, by this date, we got to be here, because if we're not there, we're not there. So I think this is very important, and thank you guys for working so hard on it. How far out do you go, Gabby? Do are you looking at like real estate prices in Millbrook are, going to become, if they keep going up, they're going to become an issue because, more private school folks will probably move in, and or there's just not any real estate available in Millbrook. Do you go like that far out to see things that are going to impact the district, or is it more sort of within the campuses?
That's a great question. So I think where we are right now, we're in what we as an organization would call plan and align. It's where we're trying to plan an initial roadmap for this, and we're aligning as an organization what we want to focus on. in a typical strategic planning process, the next few phases would have something to do with stakeholder engagement, and there's two layers to that. There's something really general where we could send out, and the community might be surveyed already. They might be surveyed out, and you might say, we're not sending another survey this year. But we would want to find ways to just like get some input from outside people. And so you could do something really targeted. Like you could say, we want to talk to students. We want to do some town halls. We want to actually go to the community. We want to talk to churches. We want to talk to real estate agents. Like, how are you actually selling Millbrook? What are you hearing about people wanting to move in? You might want to talk to future parents, right? So people who don't have school-age children yet, or younger couples, to see like, what are you looking for in a school district? And so there's a world where you could get that voice in just what we call stakeholder engagement. The other piece is we would actually assemble a steering committee for strategic planning. And this is like beyond the goals. This is probably something that wouldn't happen for a few months. But you might want to make that steering committee representative for whatever goals you're trying to write. And so, you know, if you wanted to have community members who have no ties to the school district, right? They might just live in the district, or they, like I said, they might be a future parent. They might be real estate. You could have them, you know, join and help you on that steering committee. So I think if it's a real concern to think about declining enrollment, I think it becomes more important. That helps you sort of decide what voices you're inviting in.
Well, one of the reason I asked is, you know, we've tried a number of times over the years to do an engagement program between businesses in Millbrook and our students, you know, getting them co-op type jobs. And it's never, it sort of goes and then it doesn't go. I'm just curious if we should look out that far, like, you know, a better engagement. And maybe it's just like you said, it's a matter of surveying like the Millbrook Businessmen's Association to see, you know, how we can better engage the district with the businesses within the district lines.
Yeah, one of my favorite like tools that we think about for strategic planning is this idea of opportunities for pivots. And, you know, anybody who is like familiar with anything in the business world, you probably have heard this term before, but a pivot is a change in strategy without a change in vision. And so when I think about these board goals, I think they actually provide Millbrook with sort of like a vision, right? And you could say, we are envisioning that we want to have strong community partnerships. But as you get more information, that partnership might change, right? This year, it might be a partnership with the local university. Next year, it might be a partnership with some early childhood facilities, right? It could shift just based on changing data, but that overall vision of having some kind of strong external ties has not shifted. And so I think like the board goals that I would recommend the subcommittee to draft would be general enough where they can sort of make room for pivots to happen as new information comes in, as budgets change, as taxes change. But they are specific enough where we could actually measure them, right? We don't want to make it so vague that we can't say how we're doing them and that it could apply to any neighboring district. We want it to really feel like it's personalized to Millbrook.
You just have there's a balancing act between too, you know, vague where it gives room to, you know, move and change, to the point where it's vague to the point of it's just fog and there's nothing really there.
Yeah.
We have to make sure that everything, if we're creating a board goal, it needs to have actionable district goals behind it. If not, we're just sort of wasting time. On the other side, we should be able to, when we're done with this, say, does this investment support our board goals? And if the answer is no, it's just something we like to do. It's just not that important. Or our board goals need to change. Okay. Any other questions for Gabby or the team? Very good, guys. Thank you. And I know everybody's up to their ears. So thank you very much for getting this moving.
Thank you, Gabby. Oh, you got a visitor.
Yes, thank you.
You knew it was all over with.
He was listening. This is live and recorded, right? Well, I really appreciate your time, guys. Thank you so much. And especially John, Chris, Paul, and Laura. I know you guys have put extra time into this.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Laura. Bye. I'm going to peace out before something else happens.
Good. All right, why don't we move to the budget development? Oops. Brian, you muted or?
Yes, better. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So tonight we're going to continue with our 21-22 budget development series. So just to give a little perspective of where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. We had our first update, our athletics presentation scheduled on the 26th. Update number 2 included our revenue picture and our technology update from Elliot. Update number 3 on February 23rd was a general update, and then an operations and maintenance budget presentation from Mike Ragusa. At our last board meeting on March 9th, we had our first budget development workshop, and that was really where our first half of our budget was presented. Tonight, we're going to talk about noteworthy budget reductions, staffing replacements and additions. We had a great conversation at our cafeteria subcommittee, and we talked about how we would want to think about our interfund transfer to the cafeteria fund moving forward. That's with the acknowledgement that we've had a general frustration that we'd had to come back and ask for more money. Well, how could we plan better to ask for the right amount of money in the first instance and not have to come back mid-year or towards the end of the year? So we'll have a proposal about that after that rich discussion. And then we'll talk about one of the referenda that we're going to recommend be part of our annual meeting or our budget vote. And that's going to be all today. And we'll answer whatever questions you may have. And then on April 6th, our next our next board meeting, we'll have our 6th update, and that'll be the budget development workshop number 2. And that's really where you're going to see the entirety of the budget put together. Only few of things that will be of surprise to you because you'll have seen most of them already. And we'll give you a better picture or a most up-to-date picture of the revenue package as far as we will know at that time. And we would imagine that at that time, we're going to see the executive budget come out. We would hope if it's an on-time budget. So we'll have a much clearer picture as to what our revenue package would be. And then that goes into the second board meeting in April on the 20th, where you would adopt the superintendent's proposed budget and the property tax report card. So I wanted to share some noteworthy budget reductions with you because you're in a second, you're going to see some staffing recommendations, and those staffing recommendations are going to be a lot of adds to our budget. And some of the questions are going to be, well, how are we able to afford that? So to get there, you'll see that this package right here, and these are only noteworthy reductions. There are a lot of reductions that we tried to make on individual budget lines that add up to a lot of money too. But so we went down $10,000 in legal fees, you'll remember. Custodial salaries are going down about $13,000 because we've had people retire and other people being replaced. We went down in maintenance equipment by about $10,000 and new safety initiatives by $10,000. Utilities in general, we're looking at about a $13,000 reduction. This $90,000 to the BOCES capital project, we're having the third and final of our BOCES payments, and it's about $90,000 less than last year. Administrative salaries are going to be going down by about $30,000, and that's primarily attributable to a retirement at Elm Drive. Instructional salaries are going down by about $185,000, and that's also attributable to retirements. $30,000 for Dutchess County tuition fees. They no longer charge, so that $30,000 is going away. And then we have some smaller things that we shared, about $6,500 reduction in textbooks. Arts and education, we will seek to go down by about $7,400 in that COSER. IB fees, that the high school worked really hard and with Caroline's assistance in figuring out where we're going with IB. We've had a lot of conversation at the board level, and those fees are going to be a reduction of about $27,000. When you have instructional salaries or salaries in general that go down, well, your payroll taxes that are associated with those salaries, then they also cause a reduction. So our FICA and Medicare contributions we'll see a decrease. Our workers' comp contributions will also go down to a nominal extent, which is great because it usually increases, and that's due in part to the governance of that consortium, and that we're doing very well with generally little claims experience.
Hey, Brian,
Yes.
is the I don't know what you call it, refinancing in here someplace?
No, the refinancing is not even in here yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the safety initiative reduction, I'm not sure. I don't know. When was the last time we had a safety committee report? Was it a year and a half ago? As far as priorities on the table, I'm just wondering what kind of priorities are being left on the table by us cutting some money there.
Yeah, so little actually. The amount of stuff that we've been able to get done, Mike has done an extraordinary amount of work within the safety, and just the budgeting of our secure vestibules. The fact that we would have created 4 individual secure vestibules in each of our buildings is something that's pretty extraordinary. So no halt on that. We've done a lot of work with regard to safety.
Well, I'm just wondering about the list of things to do in priorities. Someone's determining we can cut something there. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm wondering how we're making that decision.
Yeah. So where that comes from was an acknowledgement at the safety committee during safety committee discussions that sometimes we'll have ideas that aren't budgeted and aren't funded. And can't be funded because they're just an idea that kind of comes up as a result of brainstorming with the team. So that was an acknowledgement probably 2 years ago. And we said, all right, well, if these ideas are going to pop up, then maybe we should budget for them. And we did, and we put $10,000 in there. So if an idea came up, and now in this year, we are taking it out. If it's the board's desire to put that back in, we can certainly do that, and we'll find the $10,000 from somewhere else.
Well, what has it been used for?
What is
I mean, in the past, it's been in our budget before, right?
I would say it's been in our budget for the past 2 years.
Yeah. So what?
I won't know off the top of my head what it's been used for, but if it's an idea, actually one idea. So, and Mike, if you can think of anything, feel free to chime in. But one of the things, it was a recommendation from the safety committee that we install a gate. It was a concern that if we had our children playing on the blacktop at Alden Place, and there could be a car that would come through, we wanted to be able to prevent that and not have be able to have some version of a warning. So there was a gate that was installed there. That would have been something that would have been a new safety initiative and would have come from that money.
So why wouldn't we want to, I think where John was going is, why wouldn't we want to continue? I mean, I don't want to see us just waste, start throwing safety signs all over everything because we got 10 grand, but why wouldn't we? And I'm kind of putting this to the board. Why wouldn't we want to keep that? I don't know what you would call it, safety fund.
Yeah,
exactly.
Or
We're going to
contingency
need a
fund.
traffic and safety study for the do not enter sign. That makes no sense coming into the parking lot. The thing doesn't flow right. We know that, and I can't see cutting a possible. It's only 10,000. Why? I know we want to cut and add up, but because we do need things. may not have come out of the safety committee, but are blatantly safety issues.
So thanks for that support about that. So these are all of the proposed reductions that are going to lead into the next slides in terms of staffing. If at the end of the presentation, the board feels
Brian, one
as
more
though-
thing. Can you explain to the board what arts and education is, since
Sure.
I'm not familiar with it?
So if at the end of the presentation, the board decides that that $10,000 is something that you would like to be able to be put back into the budget, then we will make sure that that happens. So now, Howard, your question?
Arts, yeah, the arts and education.
Yep.
What is arts and education?
So arts and education is our COSER that we belong to through BOCES. And we put an additional $7,400 into the budget a couple of years ago. And what ends up, and that's to be able to pay for some of the field trips that happen out of arts and education. And what happens with that COSER is we pay into it, and it allows a lot of our field trips, as an example, or a lot of our student experiences to be BOCES aidable. So we actually will get our approximate 50% BOCES aid as a result of being part of the Arts and Ed COSER. So this $7,400 is something that we said a couple of years ago, we wanted to be able to have some seed money for that. Now we're coming to the realization that in most instances, it's true that all our field trips are collected money from parents. So that doesn't need to come from taxpayers. So there's that commensurate reduction.
Well, okay, but, yeah, something to think about. Thank you.
So basically, nothing is going to change. I mean, we asked the parents to pay for them. We just had this money sitting there. So we've never used this money before?
Yeah, well, I would say that it was, but it ended up getting replaced by the money that was collected. So it's not necessary, and that's why it's out of the budget. Now, down the road, if we want to have conversations about what we want our benchmark field trips to be able to be, and if we wanted to be in a position to say that if we're making a decision that if a child is going through an educational experience here on a K-12 continuum, and as a result of being part of Hudson Valley, this close to the city, this close to Albany, that it wouldn't be okay for one of our graduates to leave here without having a certain set of benchmark opportunities and benchmark experiences, we can start thinking about putting that into the budget, because we're saying that it's part of our child, what we want for our children to be part of their education. And that's conversations that would be worthy. And that would be an endeavor that we would start pumping more money potentially and more into that arts and education line, but that would take planning.
I would just be really careful with that one, because we're already talking about, well, I don't know exactly, it depends on what day of the week we're talking about the CDC, but, if that's all of a sudden we have to send a big bus instead of a little bus for a field trip, or, and I really don't want to find out, we have to cancel a field trip because we didn't have the $400 to pay for, I don't know, lunches or something. I just hate, and now I don't know if this $7,400 is like, 7,400 out of 200,000, or if this is like the entire arts and education budget.
This is not the entire arts and education budget. This is only the money that we collect from parents in any case for field trips and do not need to seed the money. That's why it's coming out of the budget.
Again, why
How many years have we been
offset? Why can't we offset the parents? Why do we have to charge them full price for field trips? Why can't we offset and give a better experience for the children? And I'm sorry, John, for cutting you off.
Same kind of comment. How long have we been doing charging parents for fees like this for trips? How many years?
For as long as I've been here and well beyond. Anytime a parent pays, these are field trips. So as a result of having your children come through, If there's a field,
Yeah.
trip, you cut a check to Millbrook Central School District and for that experience.
Every field trip, okay. Okay.
Ryan, I have a question. Oh, sorry. You guys done? I have a question.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Oh, sorry. So in the years past, I've talked about or I've asked about the reduction in class sizes. So I see here that you have instructional salaries that, you know, there's a minus there. Is there any way, is that going to happen, that the class sizes are going to be reduced? So then this instruction salary can go towards a teacher where they're going to make those class sizes smaller. Is that something it's in the
Yeah,
works?
so let's get into the staffing slide.
Okay.
We'll get a little bit more. It might answer some more of your questions.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for that.
Okay.
So the current budget will include the following. It'll include the replacements of the retirees. So we know that we had an elementary teacher, Mrs. Rizzo, retiring, a music teacher, Mrs. Tucci. In fact, Mr. Yeager has already been replaced, but this depiction represents a budget to budget difference. So Mr. Yeager's salary was in the actual budget. Now it will be the replacement, Ms. Lorino. It includes a Spanish teacher replacement, a science teacher replacement, the instructional technology specialist, and obviously a custodian. So all of the positions that had or are leaving us, we're not allowing them to go by attrition. We are filling those positions. Then we have some other proposed additions, some of which you may have heard about already, others and most will be new. So this senior typist proposed addition, that is the one that we've talked about at a couple of different board meetings. That is to be able to break up the job that is currently in 4 different departments. That is a clerical position that would be needed in order to be able to do that. This personnel assistant, it's been acknowledged that there are certain HR functions that aren't being able to be tended to. A little bit of what Gabby was talking about before, with administrators wearing many different hats. There is a lot of HR function that's shared between at least 2 different offices, and a personnel assistant will be able to help maintain the HR function and get that better under control. Then there are other positions that are either IEP driven or needed otherwise, and a program enhancement possibility. And for those, I'm going to turn it over to Caroline, and she'll describe those positions and why they're needed.
But Brian, before Caroline goes, go back to the personnel assistant.
Sure.
Why not look at a personnel officer instead of an assistant?
What do you mean by officer?
Somebody who actually is in charge of the HR department.
So in any case, so let's say it was a desire on the part of Laura to recommend an administrative reorganization such that that was in place, and that would be a great add. I would say that there would still have to be people under that professional assisting in the department to be able to do the work. So that personnel assistant would be providing the assistance for the functioning of that department to exist.
Well, considering Laura hasn't shown the board any redesign or any proposed, I should say, reshuffling or adding anything in, isn't this putting the cart before the horse of putting somebody in to add in a position the board may not want?
Well, I don't know if that's something, if Laura wants to speak to that, but for my own part, I would say no, because in any case, if it's decided that we are not, as an example, if we are unable to afford another administrative position, just as an example, in any case, that personnel assistant is going to be helpful and needed to assist Cheryl, to assist Laura, to assist what comes out of this office with regard to HR, and start getting systems in place that aren't there now because we're just too small to be able to pull it off. So I would say no, I wouldn't be of the opinion that it's putting the cart before the horse because regardless of the administrative reorg that could happen, we will need that position going forward. And if it doesn't get filled, then that personnel assistant is still all the same going to be able to start getting systems in place with the current paradigm that we have.
Well, and the other, we're not authorizing hiring these people. You're just trying to explain the budget numbers that you're bringing to us. Like, you know, this is why it's $586,000. And I made that number up, but that's what we're seeing here. We're not saying, yeah, oh yeah, go ahead and get all these folks.
Correct. So we are sharing what will likely be, and so these are proposed additions. So they're proposed as part of a workshop and a discussion now to be able to understand points of view. But these are positions that we've had conversations about at the administrative level and would likely, absent any changes, that Laura would need to understand from you. These would be recommendations that would likely be part of her proposed budget, the superintendent's proposed budget for adoption on April 20th.
So Howard, I mean, I would expect to see, you know, we're doing some bottom line number, but before any of this gets done, I would expect to see superintendent and you know, the administration come forward with, here's what I'm proposing the new organization looks like. To do that, I got to do this and this and this, and by the way, it all fits under the budget that hopefully was passed in May.
I could understand, but I would have liked to have heard about it before tonight, of course, but well, before April 20th, when the board makes a decision on the budget.
Yeah. Okay.
So Perry, just to go back, so this is just us looking at where the money could possibly go.
Right.
Like, not set in stone. There's nothing. So it's
Yeah.
just, this is what they're asking for. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. There's takeaways. There's gives and takes. Here's the bottom line number. You know, but the reason we're putting these numbers together is we're proposing, you know, later on that we do this, we replace these people, just like you saw, you know, the folks retired, but this is not authorizing this organization or even these hires. We're really trying to work through to get a number.
So, well, the reason I asked that is like, was we talked about the last meeting about Brian, like the senior typist, like with this person is, I guess I'm going too far, but is this person just going to do, I know Cheryl was doing 4 jobs. Is this going to alleviate, like, so that she does 2 and this one does 2, like how many hours, like that kind of thing? But we don't have to get into that now, right?
No.
Okay.
Right, and I guess I would say that would be an administrative decision that would happen with that reorganization of that position.
Okay.
And the recommendation is that we need a senior typist in order to be able to pull that off.
Now, the questions that are,
comment I'd like to make is the personnel assistant. Yeah, Terry, you're right. It's not a commitment, but yet you're creating a pocket of money in case you could go with an idea.
Yeah.
And you know, it does take away from something else. Else may there's lots of pulls on money in a budget.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a commitment here to try to fund something in case something happens. And you know, I'm not, without getting, and another problem I have, I don't know if this is $2 or $200,000. I have or anything in between. I have no idea what kind of financial commitment we're making to this position, but I just I'm kind of hesitant to try to add more people in a business kind of aspect when our district is declining and in students. It's just you know, I need to understand why that requires a full-time, or maybe it's a quarter person. I don't even know what that means.
I think one part is that often people think it's a small district and we don't have that much work to do. But
Right.
quite honestly, we all multitask and use our multiple talents to run the district.
Yeah.
And that the requirements and the mandates for a large district are the same for a small district. But
Right.
they have different levels of structure within their organization to take care of all of the pieces that run a district. And so these are the pieces that we need to help alleviate the pressure of the small teams that we have here in district.
Okay, so I'd like a description of what the role and what kind of duties and what the whole, what this will fix, what the person actually does and what our need is. So,
Okay.
just to understand it better.
Sure.
Yeah, and I mean, the one I thought you were going to point out was really the one that's on here that sort of is like a commitment almost, is the pre-K. Because we've got 2 pre-K teachers, 2 pre-K aides. Now, you guys know how I feel about pre-K. I think I really want it to happen personally, but we're taking up a space of dollars for those 4 positions, and we haven't really even said we'll move forward with it as a board.
Last
And
year,
one of the
recall,
things
last year
I should've-
we're going forward with 1 teacher for 15 kids. We were going to step into it slowly, I recall.
Perhaps one of the things that I should have said at the outset to give you a better perspective about where we are in budget development is that these are proposed positions based on the tax levy of 1.35% and a balanced budget of everything else that all of your district administrators said that they did or didn't need in the budget. So this is starting to, and we're waiting a little bit because we do need a little bit more cash, and I'm waiting and assuming that we're going to get that in the executive, in the final legislative budget once that's passed, because we always do. But please understand that these recommendations, these proposed additions are within the context of a balanced budget for 21-22 with the assumption of a simple majority vote, raising taxes only 1.35%. So Caroline, would you, you know what, and I'll just speak to this piece. So in every other building, we currently have 2 people staffed in the office. And at Alden Place, we do not have 2 full people. So this increase would add a portion of a person at Alden Place and get us to 2 people in each of our buildings.
So Brian and Perry, when, again, I ask the same question every year we do something like this. At what point are we going to talk about making the class size smaller? Where in our world do we do that? Because that's something that I think that we do. I mean, you're saying John, you said that we only needed 1 teacher and 1 teacher's aide for a class of 15, but here it's budgeted 2. And then we had 2 teachers in the previous slide. There were some there's money for education teachers there. So now that's what I'm asking. Like, when are we going to talk about, if we have to make the class sizes smaller, then you're going to need another teacher. When are we going to talk about that class sizes? At what point?
Yeah, so for just from an administrative standpoint, I know you asked it to both me and Perry, so I'll just answer from an administrative standpoint. So your administrators will have put together classes, sharing and having conversations about the staffing that we would think is needed from a programmatic standpoint, not from a budgetary standpoint. So those meetings happened, and the principals are knowledgeable of the positions that they have. They advocated for what they needed to be able to advocate for, and the class sizes are at the class size that we would be comfortable advocating for. So there, to the best of my knowledge, there was no one that said that our class sizes were entirely too large in any one grade or anywhere else, and we need to advocate for smaller class size. This is understand that these proposed additions came in the context of not only a balanced budget, but important staffing conversations that happened where our programmatic leaders were not left out of the loop. This budget and these staffing positions are built around what primarily our students need first, and that includes class sizes. I mean, we have class sizes of 16, 17, 18 in instances, that's not, those are decent class sizes. So I just shared that, Claudia. It's based on student need first and certainly program leader input.
When is registration over?
I can't answer that question. I don't know the answer.
I probably should know the answer.
Harry, are you talking about kindergarten registration?
Yeah. Yeah.
So our online it's online this year, so it's ever ongoing, but we set aside 3 days and those days are up.
Okay.
Obviously it's still coming in, and our numbers. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say maybe we should have Caroline come in and give us I know it can't be set in stone yet, but here's what, kindergarten through 12th grade. Right now, we think kindergarten will be 15 kids to a class. The first grade will be, 17 kids to a class. And let us take a look at, because I think a lot of the classes where they break up by subject, they're probably okay, like in the middle school, high school. But it would be good to see what we think. And again, I know kids are going to switch. We're going to get a new kid here, kid's going to leave. But it would be good to see an overall layout of Millbrook and class sizes, because we have, Claudia is right. She's brought this up a bunch of times. I know we've talked about it a bunch of times. As our enrollment drops, we can take it as a disadvantage. Geez, what are we going to do? But we can also take it as an advantage. Can we get to, class sizes that are just considered optimal and not, the best we can do with the money we have? So Caroline, is that something that you could take the board through? And again, I know you can't be exact because it's never, it keeps changing all the time. But is that something you think you could put together and take us through it? And then we can figure out whether there's some part of the school now that really we need to take a hard look at, do we need to add a teacher there?
Sure, and we can look at preliminary numbers. It's always a little bit hard because depend on programming. Certain students might be in a program that will have numbers that may offset other programming. For example, like a special class program in a particular subject area, that number may be taken out of the total when divided into other sections. But I can give you, sort of like average class size targets based on the enrollment and based on the number of students. But again, if a student has a particular programming need, that may cause one to be slightly larger and one to be slightly smaller.
Right. The other thing too is that, as soon as we can, and I know there's a ton of stuff that's got to get done between now and the end of June, but as soon as humanly possible, we need to get this pre-K thing back on the agenda so that the board starts thinking about it again. If it's changed, if we think we've got a better way to approach it, whatever, right? Where is it going to go? I think Elm has some open space now. So, all right. So as soon as, like I said, as soon as humanly possible, if you and Mike can get it together and bring it in.
Sure.
Now, then I think there was some special ed stuff that you wanted to go through.
Yeah, and right before we get there, so in anticipation of at least a short conversation about pre-K, because if we were going to introduce pre-K into next year's budget, because we were able to make it happen and we were excited about the possibility of doing it, and we were able to get that in as a benefit for our taxpayers and be able to get to a better version of intervention for our kids and hopefully positively affect our special ed classification rate. If we were going to do all of that, we decided that it would be smart, and Caroline shared some slides that is actually going to be part of this evening. So she's going to reintroduce the idea and all the work that went into it last year with her and her team. But for right now, the other positions that are in the budget were also a result of staffing and staffing meetings and IEP meetings. And Caroline, take it away.
Sure. So we have, and again, these are proposed additions. So as we are in the very beginning of the annual review process, including our transition from the Committee on Preschool Education, preschool special education, as well as the Committee on Special Education, as we do our annual reviews, we're not certain if all of these things will be necessary in the form that they're written right here. But in terms of health aides have a specific type of skills, usually related to first aid and CPR. And in some cases, they may be used because the student has a particular health condition if left unattended, could be a potential danger. So we have to plan for these potential additions for our incoming students. If they register, that will be our responsibility. And that's something that we need to always plan in advance for, although we're not certain after those meetings whether or not they'll be needed. Likewise, special education teacher, there's many things that go into special education programming. The types of programs that students will need as per their annual review meeting, and the recommendations set forth for next year to achieve their goals. In some cases, some of the programming has a ratio of teacher to student, and also they may have like an age range that students must fall within in order to be in the same class. So when we're looking at all of that, we may have a potential for add based on, again, we don't know, annual reviews are happening now, but we may have the potential for an add of a special education teacher being necessary. What I spoke to Brian and Laura about after speaking to our principals is that if we budget for this and we don't need it as a special education teacher, what we do need and have needed is more support in AIS, which is academic intervention, specifically in the area of math and reading. What we know is that front loading those services at the Elm and Alden level, specifically at Elm, is particularly important because when students get into third grade, they're no longer learning to read, they're reading to learn. So we need to make sure that as students cross from Elm into Alden, that they're all on grade level, because after that, they really need to be able to comprehend text in written form. And the more support that we have in the earlier grades is going to help, because it becomes, I don't want to say problematic, but it's that much more of a triage situation when they get into the upper elementary grades and are still having reading difficulties. So the support becomes much more intensive at that point. So if we can target these skills earlier, it's really going to be better. So what we may be looking at is a portion of a special education teacher and a portion of a reading AIS teacher or math AIS teacher or some combination thereof, as well as we do have the need for an additional special education aid, and that's based on IEP needs. That's at the elementary level. So that being said, Brian does have here the 2 pre-kindergarten teachers as well as 2 pre-kindergarten aides. When we spoke last year, we spoke about having an aide and a teacher in each room with approximately 15 students. So I believe, Brian, you have some informational slides following this. Okay, so just to call to everyone's memory, if there's any new folks watching, we had a pre-kindergarten committee meeting that met much of last fall, and these were the members that were on it. So I just wanted to kind of remind everyone, because we did put in a tremendous amount of work. We had many after-school meetings and did a lot of research. We did site visitations. We did research on preschool programming, pre-kindergarten programming, and then we also, in addition to that, we wrote some like skeleton of curriculum just to be prepared so that if a new person were to walk in, they could certainly make it their own and put their own flavor on it, but at least they had some of the aligned curriculum requirements that New York State has set forth for pre-K, which is really great that they have some updated standards for that. So this is just a list of the folks who worked on that committee. Our development process was multi-layered, so we did do a community feedback survey in which we asked questions about, does your student currently or your child currently go to a pre-K a preschool program? Is it an educational program? If you were to have a half-day program, would you send your child? If you were to have a full-day program, would you send your child? Would you require transportation for your child, et cetera, et cetera? So we also had informational tables at our launch events, which was at the parent-teacher conferences at Elm and Alden last year. We made informational flyers in both English and Spanish being our second most widely represented language in the community. So we had that with infographics and many statistics about the benefits of preschool programming. Like I said, our teachers went to site visitations around the county for other preschool pre-K programs. And then we also had curriculum and development sessions where we worked together to develop some of the curriculum based on the New York State standards for pre-K. We also began to develop a website, which isn't published, but it is in existence. And we did, like I said, a lot of research on the benefits of full day versus half day programming. And then we also came up with a potential budget, which you reviewed last year during our presentation. So we used the pre-kindergarten foundation for the Common Core from the New York State, and we were able to create a curriculum outline, which was shared with the board, and I can share it again if anyone would like to see it. I'd be happy to give that to Cheryl to share out with the board. And then this allows for flexibility for teachers to have ownership in developing the actual curriculum related resources and activities, but this is sort of the expectations for kind of the buckets of where we would want, or domains and standards of where we would want energy to be focused in preparing our students for the kindergarten classroom the following year.
Okay.
There's many benefits to pre-K, and we talked about 2 full-time teachers. Here, I know, John, you said that last year we had spoken about 1. So we had spoken about tonight about the possible potential for having 2 classrooms, which would be amazing. That would be approximately 30 students. So in speaking about a full day pre-kindergarten program, a lot of times that means that there's more exposure to the high quality learning opportunities, and also would be able to attract new families to the area who are potentially looking for those programs that are classroom based. And I think it alleviates the potential conflict with part day programs where students may need to be transported to another location, or parents may need to have a break in their day to be able to provide that transportation on their own. Additionally, there's lots of effects that have been documented in research on a child's receptive vocabulary skills. And what that means is a child's ability to understand either written or spoken language and respond to it, even if they're not necessarily able to produce that in their own language. It's their ability to sort of interact with the language that they hear or read. Additionally, we've seen the effects of positive effects of pre-K on cognition in terms of literacy, math, and physical development. It certainly would help with like concepts of print, letter recognition, number recognition, some number sense activities, and also the physical development, whether it is for fine or gross motor skills, both of which would be part of the pre-K program. Additionally, when we see more of assessments of vocabulary, literacy, and math, we're able to see how the extra school hours over time were compared against the half-day programs, and there were actually better outcomes in terms of how children performed on those assessments in the full-day programs versus the half-day programs. It's probably more time on task, and they're able to have a more varied type of curriculum, but overall the experience is much more rich when you have a full-day program. So additional district and program benefits: children would have time for a nap and lunch, which would guarantee that they have both rest and nutrition each and every day, and that would be on a set schedule. They would also have a potential for, reaching parents who would have difficulty with a half-day program. So this was really done in contrast to a half-day program last year. We looked at full day versus half-day. And then students who may have otherwise been placed in a daycare program for scheduling reasons, they would be able to be in an education-rich environment. And then it would allow for students of parents who are unable to afford other pre-K programs, they would have the opportunity to have their child receive an equal education as their peers. And then studies have shown that on a variety of outcomes and measures, students who have a full year of pre-K, specifically full day pre-K, are able to outperform their peers by the end of kindergarten. So there is a significant difference by the end of their kindergarten year in their performance on a varied set of measures and outcomes. Additionally, 80% of children who attend full day pre-K were at or above the national school readiness, while half day pre-K programs produced 58% school readiness or above. So there is a significant difference, as you can see right there, with the measures in terms of school readiness just by the half day program being increased to a full day. Additionally, when you have a full day preschool program, it's a little bit less hurried and you can have more in-depth explorations of each of the subject areas, as well as things like varied experiences, field trips, and deeper relationship building. Brian talked a little bit about something that we had been talking about just as an administrative team about a jog or a journey of a graduate. And if we were to build that, what types of things would we absolutely want all of our students to experience prior to graduation? So that would be something where we'd be able to start some of those experiences even in pre-K before the demands of a curriculum start in kindergarten. We can teach them how to be students. We can teach them some of the experiences that will help to benefit sort of their knowledge base and their prior knowledge when they're entering the kindergarten classroom. So some of the other benefits of full day programming is that there would be no need for the midday bus runs in order to bring students to and from school midday if we had 2 half-day programs. There would also be consistency in school scheduling, which would make it a lot easier to share some of our teachers from the special area programs, which would allow students to have more access to those programs as well. One of the things that's really important as well, students enjoy music and they enjoy art and PE. There's also some significant benefits to students being able to have that regular interaction with fine and gross motor skill building, as well as articulation when they're learning to sing and they're learning, nursery rhymes, all of those things that could potentially be done in a pre-K program. There's a lot of benefits to our OT program, our PT program. There's a lot of benefits in our speech program as well. So those things are really important. And if we can meet the full range of students that would be in this program with those basic services through our special area teachers, a lot of that could potentially be early intervention services in the general education, where we see that we have general ed programming that meets the needs of many students. It can be preventative in nature, and then we won't have as many students who require those necessarily. We won't have as many students who require those specific programs as they get into school age. Additionally, we would be able to have an early identification for students in need, and then we would also have time for recess and play to help foster problem solving and peer relationships.
Hey, Caroline, do we think we'll be, and this is like a novice asking a question, do we think that pre-K would offer a significant early intervention for the kids that come in basically only speaking like Spanish, to get them sort of rolling with their class so they're not like dumped into kindergarten or first grade and then trying to catch up?
Sure, that's a great question. So I think when we're talking about English language learners, we're talking about 2 different types of language. So there's the BICS and the CALPS, and one is the basic conversational language, and one is the academic language that they need to develop. One of the benefits is that when they're so young like this, they can learn with full immersion pretty quickly to communicate in those basic relational conversations. So that would be extremely helpful. And to your point, Perry, I think the time to do it, we know that the brain, the neuroplasticity of the brain is ready to absorb language at an early age. So if we were to bring them in and have them fully immersed in English language speaking environment, they'd be able to create those conversational vocabulary skills early on. And then as the academic skills would then come yes, of course, there would be academics in preschool, but once they would be that much more ready when they enter the academic classroom to be able to absorb academic language, which isn't necessarily the same as conversational language. So to your point, probably there are a lot of statistics that do show that it is beneficial for English language learners to have pre-K, and we had some of that on our slide presentation from last year, but it's not included tonight.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Does it change the rest of the program? Like, now kindergarten has to be sort of elevated a little bit than first grade because or is it sort of,
Yeah, we're not looking at that necessarily shifting. We would be looking at creating a foundation, a stronger foundation for all students and leveling the playing field for the students entering kindergarten. One of the things about kindergarten that is tremendous, if you've ever had the opportunity to spend time in the kindergarten classroom, is they have to spend a lot of time teaching students how to be students in terms of daily routines, in terms of small things that we take for granted, like cutting. Before you do, there's a whole unit on cutting. Before you do that unit on cutting, you do tearing. And then, so there's lots of little things that would still be part of the kindergarten curriculum, but those students would be walking in with routines under their belt. They'd understand proper, student behaviors, proper student interaction with their peers, all of those things, those kinds of routines that we would be able to take care of in pre-K. And there's a pre-K curriculum unto itself. And some of the readers program may be shifted down because the more exposure they have to text over time, sure, maybe eventually we could sort of shift our expectations, but we would still expect them to be pre-kindergartners, and we expect our kindergartners to be kindergartners.
okay, good.
So the reason why it's part of your budget presentation now, so we're running numbers, we're doing things, we're putting a budget together here, and I say to Laura, hey, if we were able to do this and pull that off, what do you think? Thumbs up. This would be an exciting opportunity for kids and an exciting opportunity for our community. And then have a conversation with Caroline. If we can get this in, what do you think? Should we do this? All that work that you and your team put in? Thumbs up. Mike, hey, your building, what do you think about this? This up, and to everybody's credit, no matter how much extra work it's going to be able to implement something like this, we had a thumbs up across the board because of the benefit that's going to bring to our kids and to our community. So kudos to our program leaders for being able to, this is exciting, let's do it. And that's why it's part of your budget presentation now during a staffing introduction, because we wouldn't want you to be caught off guard when all of a sudden it's before staff members in a proposed budget.
So Mike or Caroline, when, and I know this is not part of the budget discussion, but when do we have to pull the trigger on this? If we get it, the budget passes and we have it in the budget and all those things, great. But at some point we've got to say, go forth. And when is that? Is that right after the start of the new school year? Is that no, we need, we're going to need an answer on this as soon as the budget hits? Hopefully the budget passes.
Yeah,
What's your thought?
I think we would be looking to launch in September. We would want to be able to bring new students in with the start of the regular school year. That would be ideal, right? While everyone is doing their back to school return, all of the routine building, getting used to the building, all of that stuff. I feel like fall is the most appropriate time to launch this program. And is it going to be a lot of work this summer? It's absolutely going to be a lot of work this summer. But the sooner we know, the better, because we are going to need to purchase some program materials, some equipment, some furniture that's pre-K appropriate. So,
well, one of the things we'll need you to take us through is, more discussion on, what it would look like, where it would go, all that stuff. But, so that we can yes, go, but we need you to sort of back out of, hey, I want to hit the ground running September 1st. To do that, I need to have the staff in place by July 31st. To do that, I need to have something done by June 1st. Because one of the things in all these that worries me is we've seen that the just difficulty in finding people. Now, I don't know if that's starting to loosen up or not, but we never really were able to fill some of the positions we went after. We've had trouble. It seems like it takes more time and is more trouble getting staff now. So what we need you to do, and it's not for a now discussion, but we need you to back out of, give yourself some buffer space, when it comes to ordering equipment. Give yourself some buffer space when it comes to laying out the rooms and same thing with getting staff, and then back into a date where, hey, I need the board to yes or no by this date, and then we can go from there. Okay.
Great.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're planning that with the budget, right, guys? You're
So effectively,
planning this out.
Yeah, effectively, once you adopt the superintendent's proposed budget, all that planning is gonna start, and because you will have given your approval to do it upon adoption, because it would include all the pre-K costs.
So whatever pre-K supplies are needed, and so I would think that's going to be in the budget. If it's not, that could be a problem, right?
Yes.
Right, it wouldn't be in the staffing part of the budget.
Right, not staffing, right?
Right.
So Perry, I think they've got to start planning now to get the monies ready.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that, and maybe, they would say no, never assume, but I'm assuming that within the budget is also the materials, all that stuff has been at least requested to be planned in.
That's what I said, right? That's what I said.
Right.
There's in the balanced budget that I described earlier that you'll see the entirety of on April 6th, there's $20,000 worth of pre-K equipment.
Okay.
Thanks for that, ask, because that's important. Yeah.
And that's everything, right, Mike? The slip and slide,
Yeah, it's the ice cream food truck. Yeah, honestly, we've had, once Brian came to us and said it a couple weeks ago, we've been rolling with that. So we have a lot of good ideas. There was a ton of work done on this prior to me even coming to the district, so I'm going to take no credit on any of it. But all that work is super beneficial because everyone was so close to getting it done before this hit last year at this time. So yeah, we're ready to go. We'll give you a date, but if we get a yes, this thing's going to be planned out and done ideally before the end of the school year this year in June, so that our new staff can start taking part in that onboarding with the other new staff that you saw we need. We're all in on this. Even with our staff, those pre-K teachers will have the same mindset of, if we're hiring a third grade teacher or an eighth grade teacher, this is a complete package.
Okay.
Could I ask two questions? I know people don't want to hear about this stuff, but what happens if there's a school closure or a remote day for pre-K? What actually happens? Are they too young for that?
So I think that you're asking if we were on a remote day because of a school closing for a
Yes.
reason.
There could be blips.
Proceed?
There could be blips next year, starting in September, right? We don't know.
Sure. And I think that it's going to be dependent upon the particular group of students and where they are. I don't know if the first week of school, something like that happened, if they would be able to navigate the tools. But one of the things that I believe Elliot spoke about in his tech presentation was having the right types of technology in the right aged hands. So it might be something more like a tablet that they would need than with a little card to swipe to log in, rather than a specific type of login using letters and numbers that
Yeah.
they don't recognize yet. So there's many ways that we can navigate that type of thing to be able to make it possible for them. But I have a 4-year-old niece, and she can sneakily take my phone and or my iPad, and she can use it better than I can. So I would say yes, with the appropriate type of training, you'd be
Some children,
surprised what
yes.
the little ones can do. And you know, the
Some,
biggest
yes.
problem is going to be, just like with all of our elementary students, the unplanned for need for supervision for that day. That's a struggle, you know,
Right.
on any given day, right? So we're going to do the best we can, whatever circumstances we would land in. But that would be, you know, probably the largest challenge at that point, would to have supervision at home for them when it wasn't planned.
And so why don't we bring in, you know, I'll set it on the agenda for either next, whatever it is, the first one of April or the second one, so we can really talk through this in more detail, you know, not necessarily focused on budget, but focused on the program itself. The one thing I don't remember, and again, we don't need to go through it here, is did we ever settle on a method for, you know, was it a raffle? Was it a first 14 in the door? Like who gets to go to preschool? Is it a needs-based thing? Is it I don't know. And again, we don't really need to do it here because I'd like the board to have more time to really think through the program and not focus on just
Mhm.
purely on the budget.
Sure.
Caroline, is this so like if somebody did it, they have to do it 5 days a week, or? So
Yes.
it's, okay.
So it would be a full day program.
Okay.
And it, you know, that's sort of in the program design, would be that we would create it for a full day. And when we looked at some of the statistics from the data that we had last year, there were many parents who, you know, were willing to send their students full day, and there were some who felt like that was just a little bit much for them. So understanding of both, but I think for those that, you know, it may be difficult to have them then go to a daycare program.
Yeah.
So we would look at that. And to quickly answer your question, Perry, we had discussed like a lottery system based on different criteria needs. And so if you were a student who otherwise family may not be able to send you based on income, we would give you like maybe an extra ticket. And then if you were a student with a disability that might require some program related services, you might get an extra ticket in that lottery as well. So we talked about the ways that different school districts do that. We did talk about that as being one option for here as well.
Okay. Yeah, we can talk more, like I said, more about it because, you know, I really want the board to fully understand what you're proposing, how it's going to kick off, you know, what would be, you know, if it's a success this year, is something that grows the following year, or is it just that's it? So let's plan on, I don't know when we later on we'll get to the, you know, future agenda items, and we'll just mark it down as one of the ones with not 28 things on it.
I do have a budget related question here. So you're
Go ahead.
advocating 2 classes. If we had money for 4, would you have advocated for 4? The reason I ask is because last year I seem to remember that we wanted to start slow. I thought there was because it's such a different kind of program that, well, the age group is just 1 year, it makes a big difference, of course. I thought there was a notion of this is new waters, we want to kind of ease into it. Is my recollection wrong?
I mean, I think we were excited to start with 1 class, if that's what we were able to do last year. But I'm not sure that we were I don't know that we were looking to open full 4 sections at any point, but I think we were looking to start where we could and be able to grow. I actually see benefits of having 2 teachers, 2 classrooms, as people to work together and to collaborate on creating a really strong program.
That's
So for me, I think it's great to have 2 people versus 1. That's a really heavy lift for 1 person. So I feel like having 2 is actually better than having 1 in multiple ways, not just because we can serve more students, but also because you have more minds collaborating on building a program of quality.
Very good point. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Okay, anything else on staffing or pre-K?
No, I don't know if I saw it on that chart a while ago, and you didn't need to go back. Are we the tech teacher position? Is that planned to, because we lost,
Yeah, it's in there.
right? Okay, good. That's it.
Okay, so we had some really rich discussion at the latest cafeteria subcommittee meeting, and one of the things that we wanted to acknowledge together is just the frustration around the how are we thinking about the interfund transfer to the cafeteria fund, and just wanting to deal with the question of why is it true that probably with few exceptions, every year you come back to the Board of Education and seek to have more money for the cafeteria fund. And the answer really was because you have a budget and you're doing the best that you absolutely can, and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're making tweaks along the way to hope that to work on your revenues and bring more money in. And inevitably, when it doesn't happen, you have no choice but to ask for more money because the rest of your costs don't go down. So we're trying to think of a way also to explain that a little bit, because your costs don't go down because your staffing is your staffing. You can't say, all right, we need 3 people in the cafeteria, but we're only going to have 2. And we're going to cut staff. We can't say that, you know what, we're going to stop purchasing food because we can't stop purchasing food because we have to continue to feed people. So then we got to the point of, all right, well, so let's be a little bit more proactive in thinking about how we want to budget for the interfund transfer at the outset. So we did come up with some version of a formula that we wanted to be able to share with you, that you see here, and we discussed this for a recommendation at the most recent subcommittee meeting that we just had on the 19th. So if we want to think about what are we going to budget for our cafeteria interfund transfer, well, we're suggesting that it should be, because again, the goal is to get to and stay at 0, right? We don't want an excess. It's kind of like your taxes that you pay. In the most ideal world, they say that you don't get a refund and you don't owe anything. You didn't give the government a loan, and you don't owe them anything either. So same thing for the cafeteria fund, because we're not supposed to carry a fund balance in the cafeteria fund, but we also don't want to owe anything. So what would be one way of logically budgeting to make sure that you have the best possibility of that happening? So what we said was you would take the average of the 3 previous years of interfund transfers, and you would add that to the average of the 3 previous years of losses. And the reason why we took the average was because we didn't want to be in a situation where we had to be concerned with outliers. You're going to have outlier years potentially at any given moment. So we didn't want to deal with outliers. So we wanted to deal with some version of an average. So if we deal with the average of the losses and the average of the interfund transfer, that really should get us to a 0. So we're proposing that we do this for budgeting, which is why it's coming up now, because you'll see this likely in our interfund transfer line within the current budget. So this is the formula, and this is an example. So if we're saying that the average of the 3 previous years of interfund transfers was $53,000. Excuse me.
Can't be right.
One too many clicks. Is $53,000, and then we're saying that the average number of average of the 3 previous years of losses is $3,500. We're saying that on average, if we take the interfund transfer that we had and the average loss and add them together, that's what our interfund transfer should be in order to hopefully not have to come back to the board and say, we need a sizable interfund transfer as a mid-year transfer and get closer to where our budgeting is.
I don't mean to be but 60 plus 55 plus 55 divided by 3.
Yeah, did I do that wrong?
I would,
Yeah, the numbers
yeah, I
are-
mean, all three numbers are above 53.3.
Yeah, it's,
So
Thank you.
maybe this starts to explain some of the budgeting
Oh,
issue.
very funny. I think there was a previous iteration of numbers in there, and I fixed that. And
Yeah, sure you did.
oh, so look,
so
this is more of a,
56 is the number.
Sorry.
this is an attempt to be more realistic and not so hopeful, overly hopeful, such that it annoys people. You know, it annoys the board coming back and, geez, well, we thought we could make it, but you know, we're off. So here it's trying to be a little bit more realistic about the money needed now. You know, so there's just no surprises, less surprises. So there still could be an overage or underage, you know, for some of these things, as the examples show, you know, down below. So, you know, there still be some little, should be less wiggling around.
So this number would be our target. Right.
So I'm going to say no to that. Our target is to get in the black and not need that money at all. That would ultimately be our target, and it's always our goal. But this number is real. It is. There's a sense of realism to this number. Yes.
And we can track to this number, you know, so that we can see. The thing that gets me on top of, you know, the number is the fact that I have no idea it's coming until boom, you know, hey, we need this money to cover it. There should be some way to, and I know I keep saying this, but some way to say, you know, if this thing gives us a linear control number that's, you know, goes from here to here over the year, and then we can see how the actuals are accruing.
That's our next meeting, Barry.
Okay. All right.
Yep. So in point of fact, you do get that every month in your profit and loss statement. So it's all right there. However, it's written in a way that clearly is challenging to interpret. So we're going to be looking at you know, some pictorial representations to help with the interpretation of what's actually in that profit and loss document, so it doesn't feel like it's this surprise that why are we here again? So that'll be our next discussion at the next meeting.
Hey, Brian, just a quick question. So the average of the 3 previous losses, there was really only 1 loss in those 3 prior years?
That's right. When you take into account, that's exactly right. When you take into account the interfund transfer. So to say it differently, the amount of interfund transfer could have been greater than the loss.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, any other questions on this? Because unless other things change, or unless we think of this year as an additional outlier, you would imagine that you will see this, well, not 5333, but 5666 plus the 3,500, and that's the amount that would be in your interfund transfer line for your budget for us to think about in the 21-22 budget.
What do you guys think, John, Howard? I mean, you think we're on the right track?
It's part of the right track.
Okay.
I missed the last meeting due to family emergency. And like I said, this is unbeknownst to me. John, if you like it, then fine. We still haven't any transparency from why we got into this mess to begin with. But John, if you think this is fine, then we'll roll with it.
Well, it sounds like one step, right?
it's one step toward it. I mean, Howard, we'll be talking about this next time.
Good.
At next meeting.
Okay.
Great. Okay, and now we have, so a proposed proposition. And it's proposition number 2 that we're thinking about for our annual meeting. And basically, this would be the verbiage on the proposition. And basically it says, are you voters willing to approve us? We started a $4 million capital reserve, and we would like to increase that by an amount of $4 million. Well, we established it in 2012, and we want to have your permission to be able to increase it by $4 million to a total of $10 million. So one of the things that's important about long-term planning, and one of the tools that a school district uses, is all of its reserves. So our capital reserve is a very important function about where we are and our future planning. So as an example, right now we're approaching $6 million in our capital reserve. So what that means is as we work on a multi-year plan, and as we work on a facilities plan, it would mean that we could do up to $6 million of work on our buildings at no additional cost to the taxpayers. So that's a tool that we use and every school district uses. And in fact, it's a tool that school districts use in order also not to go over their 4% unreserved fund balance and stay in the good graces of the Office of the State Comptroller and still be in an excellent financial position. So one of the things that I'm happy to share, one of the reasons why we're saving so much money on that refunding that we just did, that Perry just signed a whole bunch of paperwork for, is because of our bond rating. We have an excellent bond rating. We're a AA2, and that just means that we're a worthy investment. So we get good rates. So part of having good rates is having good reserves. So we're recommending that we increase our capital reserve up to a maximum of $10 million. Our voters already allowed up to $6 million, and they also allowed us, I want to say, for that to expire by 2029. So we're not looking at increasing that amount because we have a lot of good work to do, some architectural RFPs, a 5-year capital plan that's going to involve the interviewing of all of our program leaders and for them to be able to dream and for us to be able to strategic plan around what our next generation of learning is going to look like and what kind of facilities do we need to be able to make that happen. So this proposition helps us get there.
And just for the public, this is not asking for an additional $4 million. It's just raising the I'll call it the lid on that fund by $4 million, so that if we have unassigned fund balances, we could put them in there and save them for a capital project.
That's exactly right. It's just it's a taxpayer savings account is what it is. At the end of the day.
Okay.
So we will be recommending that. So on April 20th is a big day. April 20th, you approve both of your propositions or any propositions that would go onto the annual meeting. You approve the property tax report card and you adopt the budget. So this will likely be part of that.
I'll just say, again, last time I had an issue with this, I still do philosophically. We probably last went, I'm not sure when the 2013 middle school and field was approved. I'll guess 2010, 2011, something like that, because it was put in and it was completed in 2013. But 10 years is a long time to go without having any kind of long-term plan, facility plan there. So I just think we owe it to taxpayers to have some better ideas for this money and then stop. I believe me, I would like to be 100% for this. Typically I would if we had some better planning and it came together. but we're way behind.
Yeah.
So I just can't keep on asking to fill coffers and, with unexpended money, yes. But just, we're way behind on this. And we now have 6 million. We're coming up on 6 million. So that's just unfortunate for me to be in
No,
that position. So
I agree with you, John.
Yeah, I don't know how we could move forward with a capital project, like, let's say that account was full. I don't know how we move forward until you're right, until we have a long-term facilities plan. And, and all that building condition survey and all that other good stuff that goes along with it.
To our credit, the facilities committee is moving forward. I'm not sure what speed, but they're and that's great. I mean, we're starting to move, and that's really encouraging. So I thank you for that. But it just, it's been 10 years or so.
10 years on a big project. Please don't forget, we've done about $1 million worth of
Oh yeah.
projects.
Oh, we've done smaller stuff. Yes, we've done smaller stuff. But as far as what to do with capital, these capital reserves, we're still trying to get direction.
Yep. And
All right.
and so in terms of direction, John, thank you for saying it. The next step is to RFP architects and to approve them for the next iteration of our 5-year plan, because they will create it for us. The board has already decided that we're not going to wait to 2024, which is when our next BCS is. We're going to update and get a new building condition survey and not wait for SED to say it's okay, because we can't do that. We don't have the luxury of time.
Right. So how long ago did we increase this to 6?
We increased it to 6, I want to say 2 years ago. It wasn't in last year's budget. I want to say it was 2019.
Yeah, it was.
Right. So
You're right.
we're just in 2 years, we're just starting to move on the facilities. So that's kind of unfortunate. So.
All right, any other questions, comments? Okay, thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, Laura, you want to take us through the next one?
Yes, good
Full-time.
evening, everybody. Yeah, we're moving to phase 3, full-time in-person presentation. And Elliot, if you could cue me up. Thank you. And I want to welcome Mike Ragusa, Mike Sotero, Steve Cabello, Caroline, and Brian to chime in anytime during this presentation to add your flavor and expertise and experience in the work that we've been doing. So this is phase 3, full-time in-person learning presentation. This is in the foyer of the high school, an installation of artwork, welcoming back our students in the fall. And there is plenty of installations throughout the school campuses with welcoming and love and happy and Millbrook strong kind of warm, welcoming buildings that we have. So I'm sure we're going to add to it as we move into phase 3. So Elliot, next screen, please. So we want our Blazers back. Our goal was always to come back full-time in person from March 2020. And so here we are in phase 3. All along, we've been adding students in pockets. So in the beginning of the school year, we had small groups of students in September and October. And then in November, we launched our AABB cohorts and brought students in for that hybrid model. And then at a point in time, I think it was in December, we were able to add a day on a rotational basis for our AABB cohorts. And then along the way too, we were adding students based on the rigorous process that we have for RTI to provide more support for our students who are struggling academically. So here we are now phase 3. While with changing guidance, low viral transmission rates, warmer weather, and vaccinations, we are ready and able to offer all of our students full-time in-person learning. The plan started with the administrative team, and we worked closely with leaders from the MTA, the CSEA, facilities, school food service, transportation, technology, the New York State Department of Health, Department of Behavioral and Community Health, County Executive Marcus Malerno, and our team of nurses to develop a plan that is strategic, safe, attainable, sustainable, and representative of what families are requesting. Next slide, Elliot. So in order to start planning, we first needed to gauge our parents' interest in full-time in-person learning. So as a result, we launched a preliminary survey just to get a feel for what parents were thinking and what they wanted. We knew that the survey was lacking the details and making it difficult for some families to complete, but at the same time, we needed information to inform our next steps. So the results revealed, we had 527 responses and 305 no responses, which was okay because I know some folks were struggling with because they didn't have the details and just weren't ready to commit at the time. But it gave us valuable information. So the question, given the opportunity to have your child attend school in person 5 days per week, which learning model would you choose? And you can see 74.6% chose in person 5 days per week. 10%, I would like my child to attend part-time, as in the current hybrid model, 2 to 3 days per week. And then 15.4% said, I would like my child to be fully remote. Next question, if your preference is the hybrid option and that option is eliminated, what would you choose? And you'll see that 76.8% would choose full-time in-person learning and 23.2% would choose full-time remote learning. Talked about transportation because we got a plan for all components of our plan for continuity of operations. We need bus transportation in the AM. So you'll see 49.9% no, 50.1% yes. And then the PM, 49.9% no, again, 50.1% yes.
Laura, I'm sorry, what is it currently now? Is it 50-50 right now? Do you know what it is currently?
I don't know what it is currently, and it's also a different paradigm, right? Because we're in hybrid.
Okay.
But if that's important, we can try to find that information for you. We can try to put that data together. So here it's broken down by building. 126 out of 171 responded for the Elm Drive school. 13% said they wanted to stay remote, 6% hybrid, and 81% in person. You went too fast for me, Elliot. In Alden, we had 117 out of 159 responses. 8% wanted to remain remote, hybrid 8%, and in person 84%. Then we have middle school, 136 out of 208 responded. 65% of those who responded would like in person, 21% would like remote, and 14% would like hybrid. And then in high school, 148 out of 294 responded. 63% said they would like in person, 24% remote, and 13% hybrid.
Laura, what do you think caused the high school, only half the parents responded? I mean, those were, I think, some of the folks that were almost desperate to get their kids back in. Why is it the amount of time we gave them to answer it? Was it too hard? I mean, I'm just kind of surprised by that. Well, really all the numbers at how low a response rate there was. But any thoughts?
I think maybe people were looking for more information to inform their decision. Maybe not understanding this is just preliminary and that we'd come out with another survey that would ask them to commit to a particular learning model.
Okay.
Harry, I also think that there are some students who are already attending the full week and therefore maybe didn't necessarily feel as though they needed to recommit to attending the full week because they're already coming every day.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yep. Next slide. So while we were trying to develop a plan, not only using parent feedback and just sort of the learnings we've had along the way, we had lots of discussions and considerations while planning. These discussions and considerations were among all of the people that I listed, all the groups that I listed in the beginning, the second slide. So we talked about the continuation of masking, the daily health screener, hand washing, the ultraviolet lamp. And I don't know if everybody knows what the ultraviolet lamp, but if there's a student who or a teacher or staff member presents COVID-related symptoms, that person is brought to the isolation room. But then Mike Ragusa and his team bring in the ultraviolet lamp. We move the class to another location, and Mike and his team go in with an ultraviolet lamp. And then we will continue cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities. We also now, because of the weather, we're able to open the windows and being outside more, which is a plus and a powerful mitigation. Next slide. We also discussed and considered the continuing contact tracing. We know that is another powerful mitigation to help stop the spread of COVID-19. We also added another layers of mitigations, such as the surveillance testing, which started this week in our schools, and vaccinations.
Laura, can I ask a real quick question? The voluntary testing, if someone wanted to change their mind, like before they were like, no, I definitely don't want to do it, but now they might, or vice versa, can they do that? Can they either enroll or unenroll, sort of, you know?
Sure, I think absolutely. I would suggest maybe calling one of the building nurse.
Okay.
And having a conversation with the nurse.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Next slide. And then we had discussions and considerations about protocols and spacing in classrooms and cafeterias that align with existing guidance. And we know that guidance is changing every day. Other discussions and considerations while we were planning, we were like, when is the best time for this change? When will it be least won't interrupt the continuity of learning? When will we have our buildings prepared for these moves and helped in safety? So the plan. The plan is based upon our commitment to meeting our goal to bring students back 5 days per week, maximizing our students' educational experience, supporting the social emotional needs of our students, of course, keeping our students safe and healthy, and the expressed interest of community. And that equals full reopening of schools while still providing a remote option for families through June 2021. All of this work was done in collaboration, as I said, with many groups of people, and particularly we leaned heavily on the Department of Health, the County Executive Office, and our own district attorneys. So I just wanted to thank Dr. Bidian, Commissioner of the Department of Behavioral and Community Health, and his team, and the County Executive Marcus Malero and his team for being by us every step of the way. We meet with them every week and talk about new guidance, mitigations, what we can do to bring back our students more and more over time. And then I just wanted you to know that all of the components of our plan have been reviewed by our district attorney and the DBCH. We just want to make sure that we were very strategic in covering all points.
Laura, I do want to bring out it's the district own attorney, not the district attorney.
Oh, yeah, our district attorney.
For public that may be listening, it is not the county district attorney. It is the school district's own attorneys.
Thank you for that clarification, Howard. Very important.
Laura, may I ask, we have a medical director. What is his role what has his role been, and through all this time we've been dealing with the pandemic?
Mostly we've been working with our district physician in working with staff who are seeking 504 accommodations in the workplace. That has been really our work with him.
So
and also
the director doesn't get involved in other medical concerns, like what we're doing here.
He wasn't part of this plan. He's been sort of within other conversations. I know, Caroline, you were working with the nurses regarding just sort of health clearance for students during COVID.
Yeah, there are certain requirements that students have to meet once they've been diagnosed with COVID to return to regular play of either phys ed or athletics. So once we became aware of that new requirement, we worked with Dr. Soha to understand what specifically needed to happen.
All right. So he's not involved in this overall thing. Okay.
No, we really leaned heavily on the DBCH.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So just to review and be clear about the current mitigation measures, I want to stress them, and we always want to stress them because we feel that we go above and beyond to make sure that our students and our staff are safe and healthy. So just the practices that we include right now, again, are the daily health screenings of students and staff, monitoring for COVID-like symptoms and adhering to return to work school protocols, hand washing protocols, reminders, and don't forget to do this, wearing your mask or washing your hands or practicing social distancing protocols, response to COVID positive cases, such as I said with the UV light disinfection, isolation, contact tracing, etc., and cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities. Even moving into full-time, full in-person, we anticipate that we will still identify COVID-19 positive individuals in our full-time in-person learning model. As listed above, we have solid protocols and practices in place to mitigate the spread in school. These protocols and practices will continue. Additional mitigation measures include reinforcing the current mitigation strategies while layering additional strategies into our practice. These mitigations include ventilation. In addition to the current systems in place for air handling, we are approaching a time of year where we'll be increasing ventilation through the opening of windows and going outside. Surveillance testing for COVID-19, it's voluntary. Using New York State supply of Binex Now rapid card tests, testing students and faculty staff on a weekly or bi-weekly, depending on how many we have. COVID-19 testing of our athletes on a weekly basis, and COVID-19 vaccinations. We continue to share resources and facilitate our staff in obtaining appointments for the COVID-19 vaccine. Every week I receive an alert from the county saying that they have a certain allotment that we can share with our staff. And so I help coordinate scheduling appointments for our staff using those allotments. And many people have taken advantage of that opportunity, which is great. Mitigation, ventilation, MERV 11 filters are in place where practical and are routinely replaced as per determined schedule. We will open windows in classrooms and other learning spaces to increase airflow. There's a great article in the New York Times, why ventilation is a key to reopening schools safely. Teachers may choose to take the classes outside when appropriate. Weather permitting, recess will be outside as it has been forever. We like kids to be outside in the sunshine and fresh air. And picnic style eating will be encouraged when appropriate. Classroom space. Our administrative team has been working with our facilities team in reviewing every classroom in terms of space and have outlined how to accommodate full student return to school. Based on the number of students in each room, along with the size of the classroom, desks, tables will be arranged to accommodate maximum separation between students. In most cases, this separation will be 5.5 feet by 5.5 feet. The least would be 4.5 by 5 feet. And that 4.5 by 5 feet is an elm. And there is, and maybe Mike Ragusa wants to chime in on this, just about the size of the desks and the people in that room.
So the 4.5 by 5 feet would only be a couple of classrooms at Elm. And in one classroom, we may have to move some furniture out to accommodate it. And the desks are only 18 inches wide instead of 2 feet wide. They're a lot smaller. The other three buildings would be 5.5 by 5.5. Oh, in all the classrooms, nothing would be less than 5.5 by 5.5. Elm would be the only one and the kids are much smaller. the desks are much smaller. So it basically looks the same. If you look at a picture of the classrooms, they look the same.
And that's going by 75% occupancy, Mike?
No, that was going by, I think it was 100% just to make sure, because we didn't know what was going to happen. We did this, I went and met with each principal and we went through the classrooms. We did this with the maximum just in case everybody decided to come back. We didn't want to say, okay, we could do this, and then everybody comes back and now we can't do it. Now what do
Right.
So we,
Okay.
and then based on who's going to come back, that's all the furniture that's going to go in each room.
So, Chris, just to give you some numbers on that, like, so a sample classroom in second grade might have 14 students right now if you combine both hybrids A and B, because 7 are remote. Even if 3 of them come back, it's still not that, you know. So but we did everything at max capacity as if there were no remote students.
And Mike Ragusa, one of the things that originally you said, the reason your guys were able to keep up with cleaning and respond with the staff that you have and all that was because the desks were now so far apart that it was way faster to clean them. Now this doesn't push you back to some needing staff level.
Well, not to get into all the buildings, but just to give you an idea, the desks are still going to be farther apart than normal. And let's say, for instance, in Alden, when you go down one hallway, the classrooms on the left are going to be full-size classrooms, and a lot of the bookshelves and stuff are going to go across the hall into a classroom that's only going to have 4 or 5 kids. So that'll give us more room in that classroom to spread everything out more. And as I said before, we did it with the maximum amount. So if there's 15 kids in a room, there'll be 15 desks in that room.
All right. So just to sort of change the question a little bit, you're going to be able to, no matter how many of these kids come back, you guys are going to be able to maintain the level of cleanliness and decontamination you guys have been doing since the beginning of the year.
Yes, I believe
Okay.
so. Yes. But,
no, I believe so.
No, I'm telling you. Yeah.
All right.
Next slide, please.
Quick.
So here is our Elm and here is our Alden, just to give you an idea of the spacing.
Laura, did I'm trying to remember, did that CDC report say that the kids could be that close, but they had to be 6 feet from the teacher or adults?
You're right.
How are they? I mean, what are we going to train? Are we going to train them not to go? I mean, it's just natural for a student to go like directly to the teacher. Are they going to be okay with that, even though, now that they're closer together?
Yeah, and well, CDC, we're not going to make any moves until New York State Department of Health makes some decisions, and maybe we'll have more guidance.
Okay.
But also, we do get in close. We get in contact with one another in passing or saying hi, or there are a lot of criteria for becoming a close contact. So it's less than 6 feet right now.
Yeah.
The changes for 10 minutes
Right.
consecutively, or 24 or 15 minutes cumulatively over 24 hours. So sort of these quick movements and quick passes of each other are not the risk. It's those long periods of time within certain distances.
Yeah, I was more thinking of, I don't understand this. Can you help me with this kind of connection? Because I can see those, but I guess it'll also be up to the teacher to say that's close enough, or if they've already had their shots, then.
Yeah.
So
Right.
something to keep in mind with that is that these students, a majority of them are not going to be new to any of this.
Right.
In classes, especially K-5, we're just letting them all come in on the same day. So they already have that routine. They already know the spacing. They know where, like, a common area might be set up. So it's
just
not new to them.
I just get the feeling that, you know, every time we relax something, you know, we relax sports, and then, you know, people think, oh, it's over, yahoo, and off they go. I mean, it's just human wishing, human nature. But again, I guess it's really the teacher's responsibility.
I think there's going to be some degree, you know, if we go ahead with this plan on that first Monday or whatever date it's going to be, that it's not necessarily the first day of school, but it's the first day we're all back together. So there's some forms that get set, and there's some time taken to set that culture up again. So that's the point, and something that we probably should make sure our staff takes the time to do.
And can I throw something in? So if you look at these two classrooms here, when we start the desk patterns, we're going to start from the back of the room and work forward. If you look at these desks, you'll see in front, there's a lot more room. So if we start from the back of the room and work forward, we can give the teacher as much room as possible, depending on the amount. And those two rooms right there, those are full capacity, 20 desks in a room.
Okay.
So could you help me out here? So the Elm is an example of a 4.5 by 5.
Yes,
So how far apart are the students when they're sitting down?
4.5 by 5.
No. How far? What amount of footage is two students away from each other? Because it looks like if each tile's a foot, the desks are physically 2.5 feet apart, and so from
Right. So-
two chairs would be how far apart?
The two chairs would be about
4 feet.
4 feet apart. Yeah.
Right. So
If you look at those two desks at Elm, both of those desks are on the tile, and they'll be about 3 feet, 3.5 feet in between.
okay, so obviously that depends on I know the CDC made the recommendation. The DOH, the state DOH hasn't done it yet. They probably will. And so that's more I think the probably information we kind of typically need is how far apart are the kids. You know, if they're moving around, and here again, they don't sit straight in a chair. I know they move around a little bit in their chair, but it's more like a 3-footer, a little more, huh? Distance between people. So students.
They're
Well, if you look
recommending
center to
3
center.
Right.
What's that? Center to center, right?
Yeah, if you look center to center, so I mean, I can't, I'm not presenting so you can't see my arrow, but there's one line, there's one grout line or one tile line that goes down the middle of the that first desk. If you count 1, 2, 3, the 4th foot is centered, so it's center to center.
Right
there.
Okay. Yep. And children move around a little bit sometimes too. So yeah. Just to give parents a better idea of the real separation. And I know, I mean, talking about 4.5 by 5 inch cubes doesn't tell you, you kind of need, distance between people. So
The 6 by 6 measurement was based on that same idea of the center line. So that's something to keep to know, that this distance is decreasing by 1 foot. It's not a huge 3 feet departure, because we base the 6 feet off of that center line as well.
Okay.
If it makes you feel any better, just as a parent of a younger kid in the Elm, I've heard when they're on remote days, and I know when they're as Mike said, they're like, I feel like they're conditioned, and I can't speak for every kid, but they know that when they eat lunch in the classroom, they pull their masks down to eat. They're not allowed to talk. Like, I'm sure that, I'm sure there are some kids who want to wiggle, but from what I've seen and heard, at least in my daughter's class, they're really great. Mm-hmm. They're very conditioned to do it. And, that's 2nd grade. I know as you get younger, kids might get a little more squirmy, but I know that from what I've seen and heard, the teacher's doing a great job, and the kids are really adhering to it.
Yep. You're very good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
So are we opening all the cafeterias, speaking of food services?
We'll get there, Perry.
Okay, I'm just a little antsy. I'm moving about in my chair.
And also, we've had conversations with the MTA executive board that if we do see students who are sort of getting a little lax in their practices, even the adults we were talking about, that we're just going to keep reminding and supporting and teaching It's not easy living in COVID world and being a kid in a classroom. So we have set up, and sort of like what you said, Jennifer, we've conditioned them, trained them, but they slip and they need reminders just like the rest of us. So we've committed to one another to support those protocols because we know they are super important to keep us safe and healthy. And we wanted to show these pictures because we thought it was important for you and the community and parents to know what it looks like in a classroom. It's still friendly and warm. It's just a little different than what we're used to. And then we have the middle school and high school classrooms. And Mike, you said those are 5.5 by 5.5.
Those are 5.5 by 5.5.
Okay. Next screen, please. So student schedules, they're going to remain fairly consistent. There may, and Tom Lipka's not here, but we may just move a lunch just so that we can use bigger spaces, but overall schedules remain the same. We want to make sure that teachers have consistency and our students have consistency. We don't need any more change than already has been thrown at us. As we are able to return to full-time in-person learning model, there will be no longer be the hybrid model AA, BB. Our plan continues to provide interaction between our in-person students and our remote students through the use of Google Hangouts, Seesaw. Whether our students are in person or remote, it is super important to remember that we are all Blazers. Social emotional support. Our goal is to reconnect our students with their teachers, school community, and peers. We will continue our practices to check in on students regarding their social emotional well-being and offer support as appropriate, should any need be identified. As always, this will be true for our in-person students and our remote students. Lunch and outside. So outside is our ideal location for lunch. It's not possible due to weather or other unforeseen challenges. Lunch will continue to take place in a variety of locations, including classrooms, cafeterias, gyms, and APRs. We are looking into exploring, working with teachers and principals to see if there is any interest or potential for small tents or more picnic tables outside, just so that we have more options in larger spaces for lunch. And then we want to encourage our teachers and monitors to bring our kids out for lunch, for recess, and class when appropriate if we can. So we know that Wi-Fi may be an issue for teachers to bring students out, but if it's a full in-person class, then that's not an issue. And then if there are teachers who want to bring their remote students outside with their in-person students, that will be a conversation with the building leader and Elliot and see if we can see that come to fruition. Transportation. Families who choose to send their children back to full-time in-person learning will be asked as to whether or not they will be utilizing transportation. And we have sort of preliminary results as to who wants transportation and who does not. This data will be used to determine the most advantageous seating plans on buses that allows for social distancing to the maximum extent possible. Please remember, mask wearing is required at all times on transportation. There will be plenty of ventilation on the buses with windows and that emergency roof hatch open when applicable and weather permitting. It is possible that students who are not from the same household sit two in a seat. So just a little flavor of what transition to full-time in-person instruction will look like. We've said many of these pieces already, but just put them in one slide for families. In the classroom, student desks will be placed as far apart as possible. In many cases, this will be 5.5 feet by 5.5 feet, some 4.5 by 5 feet. All students and staff will continue to wear masks throughout the school day. Lunch will continue to take place in both classrooms and large spaces, including outdoors. Remote learning will remain an option and be accomplished through Google Hangouts and Google Classroom Seesaw. We will continue to have recess outdoors when possible. Students using bus transportation will be seated as far apart as possible and may require more than one student per seat. Mask wearing will be required at all times. Windows and hatch will be open for fresh air and ventilation. Monitoring COVID in schools and the community. We will continue monitoring attendance and the possible spread of COVID-19 virus within our schools. Continue to communicate with our families when we have positive COVID-19 cases and its impact on schools and/or classrooms. Continue to examine community spread of the virus by checking the New York State website dashboard, which details information by county. Continue weekly meetings with nurses and administration. Continue weekly meetings with the Dutchess County Superintendents, representatives from the County Executive's Office and the Department of Behavioral and Community Health to review positivity rates and other pertinent details related to the virus. As we have done since our opening, we must always be ready to pivot to another of our learning models in the event that we begin to see community spread or spread within our schools. So when do we make the move? This year's spring break is scheduled from March 27th to April 5th. School will resume on Tuesday, April 6th. You'll see that as an agenda item after our presentations and public comments, seeking approval of a calendar change. We wanted to add the Give Back Day to our spring break. The Give Back Day is an unused snow day to this break, so it would be April 5th, and we would come back on that Tuesday, April 6th. April 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, the rest of that week after spring break, we will be full remote, just as we've done with the other breaks. This will allow us to maximize instructional time and at the same time protect the return of our in-person learners. So the plan is April 12th, we will first bring in Elm and Alden. That's the transition to full-time in-person. That begins for those families who chose this option. And then April 19th, that will be middle school and high school, and that will be for the families who chose transition to full-time in-person.
Laura, week of the 12th for the middle school and high school will be the cohorts, AABB?
Correct.
Okay.
And I know I probably sound like a broken record, but we needed, originally when we talked about going to a hybrid AABB, we said we needed a certain number of people added to our staff to make that happen. And then when we looked at bringing everybody back 5 days a week, it was close to double that. And we never actually got the people we needed for the first group, for the AABB. Are we sure we're good on staff?
Yes. The only, and I think we mentioned this last board meeting, the only personnel that will be expanding one, I think it's a 2-day or a 3-day monitor to 5 days in Elm.
Okay.
Or for transportation, what kind of separation are we looking for, and how does it impact our amount of buses? Can we transport all these students with the buses we have?
Yes, from as far as I know, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, so we're going to be surveying. Right now, we're looking at, if we extrapolate out, we still only need 50% of availability for our folks, because that's what parents said that they needed. But we're going to survey and get definite answers. And we've already acknowledged that we'll keep people as far apart as possible. And when it's practicable, we could do 2 to a seat, but it's going to be possible. When it's practicable, we'll do 1 to a seat. But when we need, of course, everybody's going to be masked. We may have to do 2 to a seat, and in that instance, we will definitely have more. I'm going to say more than enough, because we do now. We're going to have enough seating for our runs.
So there's no restrictions on separation on buses with masks anymore? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, it's the big part of it are the ventilation and the fresh air.
Yeah, but you have to assume the worst in case. You can't assume a beautiful sunny day, warm sunny day. You have to assume cool and pouring rain. So, what kind of guideline are we marching to there? Are there no guidelines anymore for buses?
Well, the guideline, it's guidance, right? So it's as much social distancing as you can, mask wearing and ventilation.
So
there's not a certain percentage of a bus that can be filled like there was before.
Right.
Because there
And
originally there was
Mhm.
a maximum
Initially,
capacity.
there were guidelines, and it doesn't sound like there's any guidelines anymore. Is that right?
Well, it's guidance. That's what we keep being told is this is guidance. You do what you can to the extent you can. You do the
Okay.
social distancing to the extent you can. You can make sure that kids are wearing masks, and you make sure that there's fresh air and circulation in the bus. And according to the Department of Health and attorneys and the county, and they're saying it's guidance and it's to guide your decisions. Try to layer the mitigations and use this as guidance for the decisions that you make.
However, this district has always went above and beyond since the beginning of COVID. I'd hate to see us say, oh, it's only a guidance, so we can put two big hunky, or I shouldn't say hunky, two big, large, well, you can use large, but high schoolers, let's say healthy high schoolers in a bus seat. So that way they would be pretty close to each other. So, but that's okay. But I don't think that's really would be okay for this district if that would occur. We're not there yet, but we need to see how it actually plays out.
You're absolutely right. You can tell by all the mitigations we have put in place, we've gone above and beyond. And I don't foresee us being lax in any way, but the guidance also has changed in so many ways. And we're expecting more guidance changes in the next 2 weeks as well. So
Yeah.
I mean, the state guidance is basically has gone from you better do this, you have to do that, you have to do this, to, hey, take a shot, do the best you can. I mean, and it's not just this. I mean, suddenly April 1st, the whole travel restriction comes off. I'm not sure, what drove that tremendous decision, but not that I'm unhappy about it, but we've been a year of you can't leave New York State and come back, and then all of a sudden, give it your best shot. Try not, wear your mask when you come back. It's I don't know. It's showing more and more we're not really sure what's going to happen, so let's take a shot.
I also think that scientists, doctors, the healthcare, they've been learning more and more about the novel coronavirus so that the guidance changes according to that. I don't know how much the guidance is changing, but I know that they've learned so much since the inception of the pandemic that all of these very stringent practices seem like they're loosening up. But I think a lot of it is because of their new learnings. That's my philosophy and my hope.
I have a different one.
I'm just a little worried. The bus is a situation where if you give kids, kids a chance, it's social time. So what do kids want to do? They want to talk. They want to have fun. They want to talk about the day or whatever. And you maybe get 3 kids in a seat. Across the aisle, you may have 6, that are pals or something. So I'm just wondering, what is the bus driver going to do? Is the bus driver, what guidance are they getting that they're going to, no, you can't do that? Yes, you can do that. What just seems
I think
like a little loose.
The chart before said that, non-family members can sit 2 to a seat.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that basically says, I don't know, if a kid comes on the bus and says, I'm sitting there, and the kid says, no, I don't want, I'm afraid of COVID. Does the bus driver get up and know what to do about it? I'm assuming so.
Yeah, it seems that area needs a little work to me.
Yeah, I agree. What I don't want to see is say, first student decides they need a bigger bus and then reduces a smaller bus where there was a big bus, because now the guidance is going to be different. So if there was a large bus before, then that large bus should stay. I don't want to see things being swapped out to make things expeditious just for the convenience of first student either.
Yeah, so it wouldn't likely happen that way, but what we do know is with all of these new people potentially coming back, it could end up in rerouting of many different bus runs because that's what first student has to do. And I still hold their feet to the fire about being efficient with their runs as well. So it's a balance of safety as well, because one of the things that we're not, if we're deciding that we are able to do, and we are going to do a certain number of children per seat, we would never be able to allow them to add 30 runs, let's say, as an example, and think that they would be charging taxpayers for 30 runs. So it would be me working with them to be able to balance and make sure that the safety measures are in place and there are still efficient bus runs that are in place as well.
Brian, I just had a quick question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, at the current, let's just assume 50% come back. Are there any current bus runs that will have 2 kids to a seat? I know obviously every bus run is different, but I would think that we should kind of let the parents know of those certain bus runs of, hey, we're looking like this might be a possibility, just to let the parents know. You'd hate for the parents to come home, their child to come home and find out that, you know, someone sat next to them and they didn't have a choice in the matter or anything else. It's hard to say. At 64%, we'll have kids sitting together because every bus run is different capacity wise. But, you know, we should look at that starting with the biggest capacity and kind of when that's going to hit.
Yeah, and what's going to end up happening is it may end up being true that depending on how many people finalize their transportation requests affirmatively, we're going to have to redo many routes. So the decision making that really needs to go into, if I'm a parent in the district, and I'm going to make my decision based on the fact that it absolutely may be true that my child will be sitting with another child, no matter what route they're on. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, no, Brian, I was going to say that too. You know, some of these parents too may just decide to still drive their students into their children to school. So it might not even be an issue. I mean, I think we just have to wait to see what the parents say. I know that on our bus run that comes by the house on a Monday and Tuesday, there is 1 student on a big bus. I watch the bus drive by. And on Wednesdays and Thursdays, there's 2 students. And then they go up to Honey's, and I think they're only taking one, maybe 2 children on those days. So there's a huge bus that has 3 kids on it at the end of the day. So that could be a bus run that might have to change a little bit.
I think you just have to make sure that all of the bus drivers know what is and is not allowed, what their response to those issues need to be. You know, if a kid says, I don't want you sitting next to me because I'm afraid of COVID, what's the bus driver going to do? You know, and I'm just making that as an example. And you got, 2 weeks to figure it out for Elm and Alden, and 3 weeks to figure it out for the rest of the school.
I think more importantly is that it's only as an as needed basis. So there's not 4 kids on the bus and 2 are sitting next to each other because they heard they could. That's more of what the bus driver will have to kind of police of, this only happens when it absolutely necessary to happen. But anyway.
Right.
I don't know. Is that true? I took it to be, if 2 friends get on the bus and want to sit in the same seat, that's cool. No? Yes?
Well, that wouldn't make so. Listen, our job is to maximize social distancing as to the best of our ability. So I'm going to say that wouldn't be an okay practice. Okay. If we're able to, if it's true that, I don't know, in your example, Claudia, at what point in their bus run, how many other kids might be picked up, but if it is true that we have 4 kids on a large bus, based on where we are with our routes in COVID world, those kids need to be spread out.
Well,
that's
then
the safest thing.
Then you just need to make sure the bus driver knows, right? You're going to assume the bus driver is 2 kids getting at the same seat. They're the only 2 kids on the bus, and they're not siblings. The bus driver's going to go say, nope, you got to sit over there someplace, or, look in the mirror. Right?
Yep, agreed.
And so last thing I just want to bring up is we talked about the bus situation. We talked about the people being in fixed positions at desks. What about all the other activities where people are out and about? I mean, I understand we used to do the 6-foot thing, halls, art class, music, phys ed. You want to discuss what's the new guidelines there? What are we doing for those?
There aren't new guidelines.
There are not?
There are not good new guidelines for phys ed.
Okay.
Yep.
So-
Or are you going to be able to have a full class of phys ed with, I forget what it is, 10 or 12 feet apart?
12 feet.
And weather permitting, a lot of those activities can take place outside, which is really helpful because we have a lot of space outside. So the majority of time, hoping that we have great weather, we can actually have them participate outside, and actually even the music program, they've kind of enjoyed the time that they've been able to spend outside. So we're going to use the nicer weather coming to our advantage where we can.
Are you planning on continuing no use of lockers?
Yeah, I think we would need to, because in order for students to use their lockers, they would be like immediately next to one another.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, and high touch areas.
And as a reminder on the buses, the seats are assigned right now currently. So that would also, we would be able to maintain that practice of assigned seats. So that would certainly help.
Okay. All right.
And as of right now, they're going to be continuing to bring their Chromebooks in every day. That's what we talked about at the last meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So sorry about that, formatting is off. Information meeting for parents. So as we provided with our initial reentry plan, we will schedule informational meetings so that parents have the information needed to make an informed decision about the fourth quarter. Parents will be encouraged to submit questions in advance, and this will give us time needed to prepare thorough responses and be efficient with everybody's time. So on March 25th, we have 2 informational meetings for families. The 6 o'clock will be for our Spanish-speaking families, and the 7 o'clock for our English-speaking families. Both will be recorded and posted on our website. And then after those meetings, we're going to launch that survey for parents to fill out and commit to either remote or in person. And that will be due back March 29th at 5 o'clock. And this will give us time to sort of analyze and sift through all of this data to identify issues as well as wins.
All right.
And again, family commitment until June 2021. After the informational meetings, we'll be asking families to commit to a learning model, either full-time in-person learning model or the fully remote learning model. Families will complete a commitment survey and submit no later than March 29th at 5 o'clock. And this is a commitment to the remainder of the year.
Okay.
And I think that's, and of course, team effort. We are Millbrook Strong. We're in this together. In order to sustain our full-time in-person program, it is important to follow the local and state health department guidelines outside of school, especially masking, hand washing, social distancing to the extent possible, as well as avoiding large gatherings. During a meeting with the DBCH, their commissioner reiterated that it's up to the community to continue mitigation efforts and not become complacent. This truly is a community effort. We have learned that so many times, time and time again. And I see a typo, more than ever, we need to remember that we are stronger together. We are depending on everyone to keep our community and everyone in it safe and healthy, because we are Millbrook Strong. Any more questions?
Laura, how long have the parents been notified of this meeting on the 25th? And is there going to be another one for those that can't make the 25th? I know it's going to be recorded, but if they have any questions, how will they get the answers?
Well, they can always send the questions to me, and I can work with the team in responding. We're sort of, stuck in this, like, we needed to do this board presentation, make sure that we're good to go if there are any hiccups that we didn't anticipate, and then let families know that we're having an informational session about our plan and allowing them the opportunity to ask clarifying questions. So we'll have those informational sessions. We'll post them on the website. But of course, people can always email any of the building leaders, Caroline, Brian, myself, and we'll make sure that we respond in a timely manner.
Can you also send out an alert now about this meeting on the 25th instead of just an email or on the website? Can you send a message out letting everybody know that this is going to happen?
Claudia, I can send out a text, an email, a phone call. I can.
Oh, I know, but you covered all the bases.
All in
I
one
know.
though now, all in one. So yes, I can.
Oh, okay, good. All
I
right,
can make
all
it
right,
happen.
good.
Yep.
Good. Do it all. Do everything. Leave no stone unturned there, Laura. Get them all.
Smoke signal, air carrier pigeon, whatever people
There you
need.
go.
I like that you've guaranteed that it's not going to snow again because of all your nice weather stuff in the presentation. I'm happy about that.
You had to put it out there, Jennifer.
I know.
Nice, Jen. April Fools. Remember that one year, April Fool's snowstorm.
I
Good
know.
job, Jen.
All right, any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, let's go. All right, thank you, Laura.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your good questions.
All right, next is final financial reports and warrants. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Aye.
against? Any against? Okay, very good. School calendar. I think the only thing that's updated on the latest school calendar is the movement of those 2 days, one to right after spring break, one to the Friday before Memorial Day, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right.
So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second. No,
All right.
I did it.
Any other questions or comments, concerns? Okay, all in
Oh,
favor?
wait. Oh,
Oh,
I
go
just
ahead.
have one. One of the days that they're getting back was on like a tentative field day. I don't know if I should even ask this now. Do we know if they can have field day? And if they did, do we move it? Or should I ask another
If
time?
we can, we probably would move it. I know
Okay.
there is conversations
Too
about
late.
large gatherings, and so sort of, I guess when we get to the closer
To the
But
date.
the-
later
Okay.
into the spring, we'll have more information and be able to make a decision.
But the one date has to be attached to Memorial Day, yes?
Correct, as per contract.
All right, so it would have to go the other way, I guess, to the Tuesday, if that's a problem. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay. All right, leadership reports. I just wanted to give you, and I don't know, this is probably as much for the public as it is for board members, 'cause I think we've talked about it. This presentation from an organization about how to recognize child abuse and prevent it. This is not in reaction to any specific item. This is making sure that the board, then the administration, are as up to date as possible. And I think that's coming up at the next board meeting on April 6th, maybe. So that was all I had. Howard, do you want to talk about the special meeting?
Yeah, before I follow up, before I want to follow up on your thing, yes, the child abuse training, it happens to be, we are the board members, each of us are mandated child abuse reporters by state law. So that is another reason for having this education.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make that clear to anybody who may be watching. And the just wanted to, hopefully everybody got to watch that training for the superintendent evaluation training, and like to know feedback from anybody on what you thought about it.
I completely I missed it, Howard. I
Okay.
for a number of reasons, but Cheryl's actually trying to get, they only opened it for like those couple of days. Cheryl's trying to get it reopened so, I can go back and watch it, but there was a bunch of stuff for me personally going on that I just couldn't or forgot to go in there and watch it.
Hopefully
Howard, I think
Go
it's
ahead.
pretty straightforward. I mean, it was, there's things that you have to do. There's the rubric, it's pretty straightforward. It's
Mhm.
good.
Yeah, I have the booklet. I don't know where I got it. And a lot of it followed
For
suit
me.
with that. You probably gave it to me, Howard.
Yeah, because I attended it and brought back booklets for everybody. Yeah,
Yeah. So
2
I
years
found that
ago.
it followed suit with that a
Mhm.
lot. So
Great. And Perry, was that what you wanted to discuss, or?
Well,
special meeting?
on April 27th, there's a
Oh,
special
yes,
Moses.
the special board meeting, right. There is a special board meeting coming up April 27th for the BOCES vote, because the BOCES had board openings, and we need to have a minimum of 4, quorum to make that board meeting go. And it does not have to be at 7 o'clock at night. It can be anytime that 4 of us can get together, or love to have everybody, but when 4 can get together. So I don't know.
But
if
it has to
people-
be on that day, I think.
Yes, has
Is
to be on that day. So if they want to, if anybody can say what time they could be available for it, we could set it up now.
Or does 5:30 work for at least 4 other folks? And I think it's on a Tuesday.
it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Okay.
Which day is it, Howard? I'm sorry.
27th, Tuesday, the 27th
Of April.
of April.
Of April 2021. It's listed in here as 2020, but I can be there. John can be there. Did I hear? Can you make it, Howard?
I don't. I have to check myself. But,
Okay. Well, let's
very
assume.
possible.
Let's just assume it's going on for the 27th at 5:30.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
right.
fine. I
It's
can probably
probably
make
a half an hour, right? I mean, at the most.
it. Yes.
It's already in my schedule, Perry, so you must have sent something out.
Yeah. If it's a half an
Yeah,
hour,
I
I
think
think I
Cheryl.
can.
I think Cheryl sent it out.
I
Okay.
should be able to do it.
All right. We should have enough. So
Yes. We'll have a
Um,
minimum of
let's
4.
keep it on there. Okay.
Great.
All right. Thanks, Howard. Superintendent reports.
Thank you. Just a couple of items. COVID-19 update. We have testing and travel. So I think I mentioned it earlier. The Millbrook Central School District started its voluntary asymptomatic COVID-19 surveillance testing program this week to alleviate predicted anxiety in our younger students and to allow parents to be present during the testing process. COVID-19 testing for all students at Elm and Alden are on a sort of a drive-through scenario. And those are on Mondays and Thursday afternoons from 3:30 to 4:30 in the Alden Place Elementary School bus circle. And then testing for middle school and high school takes place on Tuesdays and Friday mornings from 7:40 to 7:50 in the gymnasium or the auditorium in the high school.
Laura, do we have anywhere near the 20% you were looking for? I think you had mentioned that in one of your updates.
Yeah, 20% was the guidance when if you became one of the zones.
Oh, okay. Okay.
This is more just, I think it's more of a smaller sampling right now. I mean, that would be optimal, of course, but we're just happy that people are volunteering and helping us, if they can, keep a finger on the pulse of the health and safety of our community, our school community. So And then travel, as Perry said earlier, travel advisory has changed recently. Just wanted to update you on the most recent announcement by the governor and the New York State Department of Health that could affect spring break travel plans. Effective April 1st, domestic travelers will no longer be required to quarantine after entering New York from another US state or US territory. While quarantining is no longer required, the New York State Department of Health still recommends that individuals returning from domestic travel quarantine upon the return as a precaution. Please note that individuals will still need to quarantine upon return from international travel. All travelers must continue to fill out the traveler health form, and there's a hyperlink on the New York State Department of Health website. Individuals should continue strict adherence to all safety guidelines to stop the spread. Of course, wearing the masks, being socially distanced, avoiding large gatherings, hand washing, and all of that. So we want people to be smart when they're traveling. We want them to have a great spring break, but just be mindful of their own practices, because we're depending on everybody to return, whether they have a staycation or a travel vacation, to adhere to all of these protocols so that we can start the launch of our full-time in-person in a safe manner. And then just fall 2 sports updates. The girls soccer team won against Pine Plains yesterday. Yay. Seniors were celebrated, which is also always very nice. And there was a celebratory signing of Haley. She's a senior athlete, national letter of intent to play at Pace University. First race for our girls cross country team will be this Thursday at Falling. Girls volleyball team plays their first game tomorrow here in district. All games are being live streamed so that because we can't all be there, we're able to still watch our amazing athletes in action. And registration for spring sports is now open, and the deadline for registering is this Friday. And that's what I have to report for sports and COVID-19.
Questions? I hate to say it, but do you want to give us just where we ended up with on all this, on the football and the football season?
Yes, due to the lack of participation and safety risks, we decided to cancel football.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from anyone? Okay. All right. Cheryl, do we have anything from the public?
We do. We have 2 questions from Cindy Madison. Since our varsity football season was canceled, can you please address why our athletes cannot play on a neighboring district or seniors are missing out on their last season, and how much insurance money is being saved by canceling football?
So I don't know how much insurance money was saved because that was not a factor in the decision.
I can just tell you though that it's $0. We didn't save anything as a result of canceling football. I don't know if the insurance company chooses to give a refund. I just don't know that, but I can find that out.
Okay. The next question is Lisa Dolan. When are you planning on bringing all hybrid students in and blending cohorts to increase in-person instruction as the guidelines have changed, which we obviously just had a full discussion on? And the last question is Heather Lavarnway. Will the Board of Ed be voting on switching to 5-day in-person / remote, or is it just assumed that the schedule is changing? The Board of Ed always voted when instituting different models in the past. That's our last question.
Or did you want me to?
Go ahead, Caroline.
Sorry, I just didn't know if you wanted me to answer the other athletic question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So it's a long answer, but I'll give it my best in shortening it due to time. So a student can only play where they are considered a bona fide student. So they have to be enrolled in the school for 4 classes plus physics. So that's the general rule of bona fide students. Once a student begins their 9th grade year and they play sports in a particular school, that is their home school in terms of athletic eligibility. So in order for them to play in another school, even if they registered in that new school and became a bona fide student in that new school, if they played the sport in the preceding school year, unless there was a corresponding change of address or there was a transfer waiver application that was submitted to the section and approved, they would actually have to sit out for that season. So if they played football last year and say transferred to Weebatuck without a corresponding change in their parent's address or other waiver exemptions, which would need to be approved by the section, and I will say they're kind of strict about it because they don't want recruitment of public schools, so to speak. So they're fairly strict about that. They actually would have to sit out for a season for that sport, provided that they played in a previous year. Additionally, the only other way that it would be able to happen would be through a merger, and that would require intermunicipal agreements and board action on both school districts' parts, as well as notification to the league and the section annually. So in order for that to have happened as a team to combine with another district, there's board action that would have to happen on both parts of the districts and intermunicipal agreements for anything not covered in there specifically. So it's a long process, and some of the fact that we were in a pandemic is also what precluded those types of things happening previously. We've done it for other sports. I know that was mentioned that it was done for lacrosse, but all of those things were done well in advance of the season.
Caroline, did we give any consideration of just practicing and not competing, just to kind of prepare them maybe for the next year or give them some sort of, involvement in the sport? I'm just curious.
I don't know that that was considered necessarily, as we did consider it a safety issue. We can certainly
I was just
discuss
curious.
something like that, but as far as playing in a season,
Right.
the determination was made due to low participation numbers and safety concerns.
I understand.
So can you please enlighten me on what you're meaning by safety concerns?
So the low participation would require the same students to play offense and defense, which can lead to fatigue. We also have some members that were registered who had never played before, so they would be learning the game. And we also have some, it's kind of hard to answer these questions without going into specific details. And since the eligible roster is kind of small, you can kind of figure out who some of the folks are. And that makes it very challenging to answer these questions. But some students were only willing to participate in practice and not in actual competition, which is an issue. We have students who are registered as like a kicker and would not necessarily play on the field. So there's lots of factors that, we can't discuss openly due to the FERPA rules that we have to follow, that make it challenging to give parents the information that they want. And I get it. It's very challenging when you don't have all of the information. We've tried to be as transparent as possible, but there are laws that require that we not share additional information about specific students.
No, I'm aware of that. Caroline, can you, how can I say this? Was there enough players medically cleared? If you know and can answer it.
We did not have enough players medically cleared and or academically eligible. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you. It's just, I wish we weren't on these type of Hollywood squares set up. I wish we could be in person in the boardroom and the parents could physically be here so we could talk to them and really hear their concerns and answer this face to face, so we could try to make everybody try to understand. Like I didn't know those answers till tonight, and again, I wish we could be face to face with our fellow taxpayers. Thank you.
Understood.
So Caroline, I have a question, and it's along the same lines. I mean, there's more enlightening tonight about why the sport didn't go on, but there's a question that I have, and it's something that I went through with my two boys at the school, and it's a safety issue. How are you assessing what is safe? And the reason I'm asking that question is, when my boys were in the middle school, when they would go out at recess, they were told they can't kick the ball hard, they can't run fast, they can't throw the ball fast, they can't do things, they can't run, kick, throw, whatever it is, they can't do it fast. How is that measured? How is that assessed? So that's part of the question. The other part of the question is that if a 7th or 8th grader or an 8th grader wants to play in a varsity sport, they have to be assessed and pass a test to become a varsity player. And if they pass the test, then become a varsity player. So now we're back at the high school level, and the school talks about having, that it's a safety concern. What assessment are you giving to these students to show whether or not it is safe for them? Because is anybody out there watching the kids throw the football, kick the football, tackle, whatever it is, to show that they are or not safe? Now, I know that in other schools, because I've already asked around, that in other schools, there are a number of freshmen playing in these 8-man football teams. So, I understand. I need to let parents understand this. And I know that, you said that there just wasn't enough students for this eligible players, but, there was enough. If there's other freshman players on the team, did we know that for these students to play? Because, like I said, the other school districts have freshman players, so our freshmen would be playing against their freshmen. And again, how are you assessing these players that it's safety? I mean, I think that's a fair question.
Mm-hmm. So it has to do with the participation numbers.
Right,
and
that
being the safety issue. It's not about, who's playing necessarily, et cetera. And to speak to your earlier point about middle school students, yes, they can take like a physical assessment test. The difference between that and a student playing up on a sport, the reason that is in place is because they actually have to reach physical maturity standards that are medical physical maturity standards in order to be eligible to play with students who are bigger, faster, stronger than them, potentially. So there's a component of that is actually a medical component, a physical assessment that needs to be done. And then there's like an athletic assessment where they need to be able to perform certain athletic tasks in a certain amount of time. You cannot take middle school students and fill a roster with them. So that's actually not intended for it to be the way. That's really for standout athletes, and it's generally by a recommendation of the coaches in that program saying that this particular student has, athletic abilities in this particular sport, as well as their, physical athletic abilities, whatever it be, that they would be somebody that person would like to look at and consider and see if they can pass the test. It's not really intended to be that just anybody who wants to take the physical assessment to play up is able to do that. And that is for safety concerns, that they will be exposed to much larger players.
And I got to believe, Caroline, one of the reasons we have an athletic director, we have principals, we have, high school principals, we have all these people. We go into these things not wanting to cancel them. We go into football, and like lacrosse got canceled. I think it was, I don't know, it was last year, probably the year before. It all blurs together now. But the bottom line is, we go into every sport. You guys go into every sport wanting to have them play.
Of course.
but being restricted by a set of rules and a set of, I'll call parameters that just makes it impossible. I mean, this is not the first season of anything that's been canceled in Millbrook because we didn't have enough players to play safely.
Correct.
So I just, I want everybody to understand that. I mean, there's nobody that goes into this, as far as I know, that says, oh man, we got to get football this year, get rid of it. It's if anything, it's been so disappointing to see the lack of participation continue to drift down on things like football, where we're playing 8-man and then we rely on another school, and it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, and we're already working on conversationally working to set up a merger for next year so that we will not be in the same position in the fall.
Well, and hopefully it'll be a real football season in the season where it was intended. Anyway.
We had no control over that at all.
So any other, questions before we move on?
Well, the lack of participation with the football and what happened with the football, it also affected the cheerleaders. So it was a ripple down effect. So, I mean, I feel terrible for all the kids in this season.
Absolutely.
And we actually offered for them to continue to cheer and practice, and if they wanted to cheer for other sports. So that actually wasn't the decision that was made by the district. We did give them the opportunity to continue.
Oh, good.
If they wanted to.
Okay.
So
because we didn't feel like it was right to take that away from them if they wanted to still do that.
Oh, perfect.
So there was one other question that was asked about, does the board need to vote on bringing this back? What we voted on was whether or not, when and whether to let our kids in, either, way back when. It was, we're going to go full remote to November 4th. Then we're going to, slowly introduce this. And it's not a board decision or a board's prerogative to basically say, okay, now you can bring in 3 kids. Now you can bring in 4. They can come in 2 days. We're 6 days. It's more about, that, and we're still really in a hybrid. It's phase 3 of hybrid, because there's still going to be kids that are fully remote. There's still going to be, times when we have to shut it down. Hopefully not, but if we do, we do. And the board is just, questioning or making sure that this next phase of hybrid, if there's anything that we're worried about, we're bringing it forward, but it's not necessary to vote on it. It's more, I mean, the administration has been adjusting the number of kids in. It's been done by school. How many kids come in, how many days a week. So it's not necessary. That was a long-winded answer for what should have been a pretty short question. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware on that. But that's one of the reasons we just reviewed what the plan was.
Cheryl, how many questions actually came in? Was it just 3, 4?
We had 4, and 2 of them were from the same person.
Okay. All right. Let's see, where is the agenda? Facilities committee report. Oh, it's 10 o'clock. We're an hour behind.
We have a meeting this week, right, Claudia? Brian?
Yeah, Brian. Where's Brian?
I'm here.
There's Brian.
All right, so you guys are meeting this week?
Yep, we have a meeting on Thursday, and Claudia and I collaborated on an agenda, and and we'll be talking about energy savings, and we'll be talking about projects and a whole bunch of good stuff.
All right. I think we just heard from the goals subcommittee earlier. I think the board food service committee unless you guys tell me if you have something more to add to it, but we heard that sort of where they are and next steps. Board Policy Committee. I saw your note, John. You want to just
Yes.
did it get set up?
I didn't copy everybody on that. I'm reaching out to NISBA to set up a meeting to get this back on track and get a schedule to work on, with them about how can we move this forward.
Okay.
I've asked for that to be this week, and we'll be meeting again policy-wise next Monday.
Okay. Good. All right. District Data Committee. Cheryl, none of the it usually has who's the leader and all that good stuff. That's all seems to be missing on mine, at least.
Yeah, mine disappears too. I have to refresh it and go back and it goes back on.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
Should be in the administrative content.
Yeah, I should see it, but I don't see it. Let me see what it says now. Anyway, there was the District Data Committee, and I'm not sure.
It's
I don't have it.
everybody. Yeah.
We're meeting
was
on
me.
Friday.
Okay.
We're meeting this coming Friday.
Yeah, that's still not in there. Anyway, just maybe take a look at
It
it.
was earlier. Harry, it was earlier.
Yeah, I could see it.
You
I
can see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Okay. All right, District Leadership Team.
That's Paul.
Yeah, Paul's not here tonight. District Safety Committee.
I think that's Paul also.
Paul. That's Paul.
All right, District
I'm sorry,
Technology.
I was muted, and I was just about to share that we do have a district safety committee meeting tomorrow. So some of the items we'll be talking about is monthly checks of the PA system, the pandemic plan adoption, follow up on threat assessments, drill reports. All of our folks were invited to also to add any agenda topics that they would like to. We talk about other health and safety concerns like accident and incident reports. We'll talk about the secure vestibules and any other projects that we think that we need to add. So that meeting's tomorrow.
Claudia, you're the alternate. I don't know if Paul's going to make it. Are you available?
What time tomorrow? At what time, Brian?
You're muted, Brian.
3:15 tomorrow.
And it's a Zoom call or is it in person?
It is a Google Meet.
Oh, hold on. A car just drove by really, really loud with a really loud muffler. Say that again.
It's a Google Meet.
Okay. At 3:15. Okay. If you want to send me an invite,
Will do.
that would be great. Thanks,
Thank
Howard.
you. Thank you, Claudia.
Okay. The District Technology meeting. We had one of our first meetings with teachers and staff members to really start looking through, what is the post-COVID, post-pandemic technology? Where do we want to go next? What are the teachers seeing as opportunities? Personally, I thought it went really well. I thought there was some, really good ideas that came from teachers, especially as they've adapted to this new situation, or the situation that they've been in for some time now. But next steps are to sort of corral it all and build it into a plan. And I don't know when the next one is. I don't remember, to be honest. District Wellness Committee. Anything there, Howard?
Not that wasn't covered before. John, was there anything that you didn't cover from the last meeting?
I'm not part of that.
This is a wellness.
That's right. I'm
Yeah.
thinking wellness and I'm the other one. No, nothing. Brian, there's nothing scheduled on that yet?
No.
Okay, then there's nothing.
All right.
Sorry.
All right. Dutchess County School Board report. It was actually the last meeting was quite a while ago now. First Thursday of the month. We went through, the first part was the yearly viewing of all of the ways in which the different districts handle things like teachers' contracts, CSEA contracts, comparing and contrasting Millbrook and I don't know, Pauling and everybody. It was David Shaw went through some of the trends that are out there now. And then we also went through a fairly detailed discussion with NISBA and Lower Hudson on the efforts that are being made and sort of tying it into how are we going to set up some of these meetings with the legislature. But it was actually a really interesting discussion. It's always helpful right in the middle of sort of the contract negotiation, budget scheduling, to hear what everybody's doing. All right, your enrollment report is there for your entertainment. I don't think we don't have any sort of motion necessary on that. Any questions on that? The facilities report. One of you guys. Oh. All right. Is there anything you wanted to point out? I mean, honestly, the only thing, and it's one of the things that I really, when we were talking about board goals, this still, what is it, 18, 20, about 25,000 or 23,749 gallons of oil used in January. I mean, and I know a lot of it is the inefficiency of the buildings, but we have to be better environmental stewards, and we need to have plans in place to get these projects moving, get our, reduce our carbon footprint, reduce our overall waste. It's one of the things that I'd really like to see us focus on, because there's not a heck of a lot that can be done without investment. I mean, at least that's the way I look at it. But anyway, any other comments on the facilities report?
I do. Caroline, how's your new office?
I have one more box to unpack and then I'm fully moved in.
Okay.
But it's beautiful. It's thank you to the facilities team, because they've been extremely helpful in the technology department, moving everything up for us. It's exciting. It's an exciting move. It's just hard getting settled in the middle of annual review season, but we're getting there.
The lights keep shutting off.
The lights don't shut off in this one. They were sure to take the sensor out for
They
me.
fixed it. Great.
All right. MEF report.
Just real quick. We met last week. We did get a new treasurer. We're still in need of a vice chair, as well as other trustees. Since we're not having Taste of Millbrook again this year, unfortunately, they are working on a new twist. So stay tuned for that. They will be doing some sort of fundraiser. And just encourage all the teachers to submit your grants. I know it's been a busy year, but they've been very low. So just, if everyone can kind of put the word out, that would be great. We'd love to help where we can.
Okay, thanks, Chris. PTO report.
That's me. Yes. So I did want to make one clarification that I think was from like at least a month ago about the yearbooks, where I said I think somebody said, does the PTO do yearbooks? And I just kind of said, yes, they don't. That being said, I know some teacher volunteers have done that. And I know at least for Elm, they were asking for more pictures. So if there's anybody that's still watching and has pictures sent in, please. I think I probably sent in like 50 of my kids. So if you don't want to see my kid plastered all over it, please send pictures in. So the fundraisers, the Gertrude Hawk chocolate fundraiser, you evil people, you. They said that and this the Gertrude Hawk did very well with it. So that was great. That, like, I know we just got, I think everybody had their pickup last week. And then Square One Art just got sent home for the kids. So, you know, please order stuff. They're doing well with that. And I gotta, if you have a 3rd, 6th, or 9th grader that's on the computer right now listening, make them turn it off. The PTO just got the classes, I guess, that are moving to 3rd, 6th, 9th graders gifting by the end of March. It's a surprise. Do you want me to tell you what it is? You can't tell. They're getting them like cards or something to go to Roller Magic.
Oh,
Got ours. We got ours
now.
this. Yeah, we got ours.
Oh,
this
you did
week,
already
so-
get it? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I talked to them like 2 weeks ago, so it might have already been out. So I thought that was nice. They were able to do that. Staff Appreciation Day in May. They're going to get a gift certificate from this place, the Millbrook Deli and Pizza, maybe?
I've heard about it.
Yeah. So I guess they usually do something where everybody gets together, but they can't do that. I know we, as a parent, I already got the information sent to me in like an email to send money back in, and I forget the date in April. They want it back as soon as possible. So if anyone's listening, to if they want to send in for that, and they're getting their newsletter out. So I did see it posted on social media. So I was very happy to hear that, like, they're fundraisers, because you never know with, this pandemic, but they said they did really well with at least the Gertrude Hawk fundraiser. So that was great.
All right.
That's it.
Thanks,
Oh,
John.
their next meeting's April 5th at 7 p.m.
Okay. Suspension incident report. Let's see. Any comments? Oh, it's actually not in there, Cheryl. Should have looked.
We didn't have any this month.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Future agenda items. So we've got the child abuse budget development on the 6th. I don't know how you guys feel. I mean, the 20th is very full. Maybe we can add the pre-K on for the 6th. And then you see the rest. Is there any, that we'll have these ongoing meetings about the technology board goals and district goals. Anything that's missing?
Harry, can
Okay.
I know we talked about it. I know Caroline, I think, is going to work on it, but just to make sure it's on the items, is this the classroom sizes?
Yeah.
And then also, again, it's something that I've asked to talk about. And I know obviously it's not going to happen this year, but just so everybody's prepared, are those internships? Are we going to continue those? Are we going to do more? Are they going to keep the kids in the school instead of taking them out the last quarter for school? I don't know what's going to happen this year. I'm assuming it's not going to happen this year, but is it something that needs to be talked about for next year?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that was one of the reasons I brought up within the board goals of, are we going to talk with, there's no sense in trying to do internships if it's sort of yeah, I can do it, but I don't know what they're going to be involved in. So at some point, maybe, that probably is hopefully in May, we can talk about that, the plan for the internship program. Does that sound fair, Caroline?
Thank you.
Caroline?
I was shaking my head. Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm reading the whatever agenda. All right, so let's get that on for May. Let's get the pre-K presentation on for the 6th of April. And then we'll jockey for position as we move forward. There's nothing for board expectations. We have several things that we need to go through in executive session. Do I have a motion to go to executive session for the discussion of personnel and legal issues?
I'll make the motion.
That was a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? All right, thank you. All right, Cheryl, send us on our way.
Okay,
Thanks, good.
We'll need Caroline for the,
okay.
Yep.
The principals can go? Or do we-
yes.
Yes, yeah. Well, no, the principals can go home or go to bed or whatever.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
guys.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Hey, Brian.
Night, Brian.
Night, Brian.
Night,
Brian.
Elliot.
Good night,
Night, Elliot.
Elliot.
Good night, all.
Night, Elliot.
Wait, I just have to say one thing. I love Elliot's background. Sorry, I love his background. I love the blue background.
It's pretty bad when I had to sign all that stuff and it was a real pile. And so Brian brought it over, dropped it on my porch, went back, got in his car, sat and ate his lunch while I took all that junk inside, signed it all, brought it back out, dumped it on the porch, let Brian come on. I mean, this is just
There's a
insane.
lot. Okay,
It's just nuts, but anyway.
you should see
Thanks, Cheryl.
Got
room
it.
two.